Hey guys, it's Nemo again. Just want to say thanks for tuning in for these 20 new Tinder horror stories. Now, just want to say if you enjoy these stories, please hit that like button. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the Wide Awake Horror family. Now, let's enjoy these stories.
I didn't expect anything weird to happen that day, which is probably why it works so well. The intro to this whole mess started like any other normal scroll through Tinder while I was half paying attention, laying on my bed with one earbud in and a charger barely holding on. Her profile felt normal in a way that made me stop scrolling. Not perfect, not trying too hard. Blurry mirror pics, a couple outdoor shots, one photo where her face was half turned like she didn't care if anyone fully saw her or not. It felt chill. I swiped. We matched fast. That alum gave me a little buzz. We talked for a few days. Nothing deep, nothing flirty enough to feel forced. It felt like someone who typed like a real person, not like a copy-paste bio come to life. I remember thinking she felt close, like if I turned my head, she might already be somewhere nearby. That thought didn't bother me then. It does now. We picked a coffee place that wasn't some big chain. Small spot tucked between a bike shop and a closed-down nail salon. The kind of place with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu that always had something crossed out. I got there early because that's just how I am. I sat by the window and watched people pass, trying not to stare at my phone too much. When she walked in, I knew it was her right away. Not because she looked exactly like her photos, but because she didn't. Her hair was a little darker. Her posture was different. Like she wasn't fully present in her own body. Still, it wasn't enough to feel wrong. People always look different in person. I reminded myself of that. We sat down. I remember noticing how quiet it was around us, even though the place was busy. Like the sound didn't land where we were sitting. I kept checking my phone out of habit, flipping it face down, then face up again. The date felt fine. Not amazing, not awkward. Just fine, like a placeholder memory. About halfway through, my phone buzzed on the table. I almost ignored it. I'm glad I didn't. Tinder sent a notification. It was the message. It was one of those system prompts, the kind you can't reply to. It said they needed to verify my identity to continue using the app. That wasn't weird by itself. Apps do that sometimes. What was weird was the timing. What was worse was the button underneath. It said continue verification. I tapped it without thinking. The screen shifted to the camera, front facing. My face filled the screen, slightly warped by the angle. There was an outline shape like one of those passport photo guides, telling me to line myself up. Then another prompt appeared underneath. Verify using a recent photo. Make sure the person in the image matches your surroundings. Before I could even process that, the screen split. On the bottom half of my phone was an image, a photo. It took my brain a second to understand what I was seeing because it felt like my eyes were lying to me. It was me, sitting exactly where I was sitting. Same chair, same window behind me, same hoodie, but the angle was wrong. It was taken from slightly behind my right shoulder. And standing behind me in the photo was her. Not her sitting across from me. The her in the photo was closer, leaning forward, her face clearer, her eyes pointed straight at the camera, not at me. Her mouth was smiling. It was just resting open like she had been caught mid-breath. My hands started to feel disconnected from the rest of me. I slowly tilted my phone down so she couldn't see the screen. I didn't look up right away. I didn't want to. The app didn't close. It didn't freeze. It waited. Another line of text appeared. Please confirm this is you. I didn't tap anything. I finally looked up at her. The version of her sitting across from me looked the same as before. Same slouched posture. Same blank, calm face. She was staring at the table, not at me like she had zoned out. I checked behind me using the reflection in the window. There was nothing there. Just the street and a bike locked to a pole. I looked back at my phone. The photo was still there. No timestamp. No metadata. No option to report. Just yes or no. My chest felt tight, but not in a panic way. More like my body was trying to go quiet. I noticed then that the coffee had gone cold. I noticed how my hands were shaking. I noticed how normal everything still looked except for that screen. Another buzz. Tinder again. Verification pending. Please complete. The image updated. This time her face was closer to the camera, closer to me. The angle had changed like whoever took it had leaned in. I could see details I hadn't noticed before. A small mark under her eye. A crease in her neck. Things I hadn't seen in the version of her across the table. I slowly stood up. My chair scraped a little too loud. Nobody looked over. That felt wrong. I pretended to stretch and stepped to the side like I was heading to the bathroom. I passed by the counter and glanced at the security mirror above the register. In the mirror, I saw myself walking. And behind me, half a step off, was her. Not the one at the table. This one wasn't fully solid. Her outline didn't match the light. She moved when I moved, but delayed it like bad streaming video. Her feet didn't touch the floor. I didn't stop walking. I didn't run. I pushed through the bathroom door and locked it. My phone buzzed again. Identity match almost complete. The image now showed me from inside the bathroom. Same angle, same lighting. And she was right behind me, her face next to mine like she was trying to share the frame. I read the prompt 3 times because my brain refused to accept it the first 2. Final step. Turn around. I did. I stared at the mirror in front of me. My reflection looked normal. Too normal. No one behind me. No movement. Just me and the flickering light above. My phone vibrated nonstop. The screen changed without me touching it. Verification failed. Thank you for helping keep Tinder safe. The app closed. The bathroom door rattled gently, not like knocking. More like someone testing if it was locked. The mirror behind the sink flickered, and for a split second, my reflection didn't move when I did. I unlocked the door and walked out. The coffee shop looked the same. People laughing. Cups clinking. The table where we had been sitting was empty. My cup gone. Her cup gone. The chair across from mine pushed in like no one had ever sat there. I walked out into the street. The air felt thicker, like it had weight. My phone stayed quiet the whole walk home. When I got back to my apartment, my Tinder account was gone. No email, no warning. Just like it had never existed. That night, I checked my camera roll. There was one new photo, taken during the date, time-stamped right when the verification started. It showed me sitting at the table alone. And behind me, slightly out of focus, was someone holding a phone. The first thing that hooked me wasn't his face or his bio or even the match. It was the timing. I had just deleted Tinder the night before, then reinstalled it the next morning while waiting for a bus that never showed. I was annoyed, bored, half awake, thumb scrolling like muscle memory. Then his profile popped up first. No flashy pics, no gym mirror stuff. Just normal clothes, normal lighting, a smile that didn't feel practiced. It felt like the app was nudging me instead of the other way around. We matched fast. Again, not exciting, just smooth. Talking to him felt like leaning back into a chair that already knew my weight. Nothing intense. Nothing off. We talked about dumb stuff. Shows I half watched, food places I never went to, the way days blur together when you live alone and nobody checks in. It felt casual in a way that made time slip. What I remember now is how often he asked where I was. Not in a creepy way. Just small check-ins, like asking if I was home yet or still out. I chalked it up to interest. People like knowing where someone fits into their day. I did think twice about it. We met in person a week later. Not coffee, not a bar. A little park tucked between apartments and a long stretch of road. Kids' playground on one side, dead grass, and a basketball hoop on the other. It was late afternoon, that time where everything looks flat and soft at the same time. He looked like his photos. Maybe even calmer. He didn't do much. Didn't talk with his hands. Didn't fill silence. It felt easy to just sit there. After that, we kept hanging out. Sometimes planned, sometimes last minute. He never pushed. That was part of why I trusted him. He let things happen. Let time stretch. Let me leave more than I noticed. Then one night, while I was back at my place, scrolling through my phone with the TV on mute, he asked something that felt small that stuck to my brain. He asked if I kept my location on for friends. I said sometimes. He asked if I would mind keeping it on for him too. Not sharing it, just on. He said it made him feel closer when I wasn't around. That line felt strange, but not alarming. I remember staring at my ceiling after reading it, thinking about how people phrase things differently. How some people just sound intense without meaning to. I didn't respond right away. When I did, I said it was fine. I turned it on. Nothing happened at first. Days went by. We texted like usual. If anything, he felt more relaxed, less checking in, like the question had scratched an itch I didn't know was there. Then he started mentioning things, like how he liked when I stayed in, or how he knew I had trouble sleeping on nights when I paced around. He said he could tell when I was restless. I laughed it off. Phones track everything, steps, motion. It didn't feel impossible. But then he mentioned streets I had told him about, places I didn't post. He talked about my routines like he was reading notes. I told myself I was overthinking. People notice patterns, especially when they care. One night, I went out with friends and forgot to charge my phone. It died while we were still out. When I got home and plugged it in, my phone exploded with notifications. Missed messages, missed calls, not angry ones, worried ones. He said he felt like something was wrong because I went quiet, but my location didn't. He said it felt like I was still moving but not responding. That sentence sat wrong. I started turning my location off at night. Not always, just sometimes. Each time I did, he noticed. Not immediately, but within hours. He never accused. He just asked if my phone glitched, if something reset, if I needed help fixing it. I told him everything was fine. Then I started seeing him places we didn't plan. Not right next to me, just nearby, across the street, inside a store I walked into, sitting on a bench I passed. Never close enough to confront without feeling silly. Maybe coincidence. Cities are small. People overlap. One afternoon, I was walking home and felt the pressure you get when someone is behind you. Not footsteps, just awareness. I checked reflections in windows. Nothing. When I got home, my phone buzzed. He said he was glad I got back safe. I didn't tell him I had told him I was out. The next time I turned my location off, it didn't stay off. I would switch it, lock my phone, check later, and it was back on. I blamed settings. Updates. Myself. I read articles about apps overriding permissions. It happened enough that I stopped trying. Things escalated quietly. That's the part that's hardest to explain. Nothing snapped. Nothing screamed danger. It was like being slowly crowded by something polite. He commented on how my lights were on late, how I moved rooms a lot, how I sat still for long stretches. One night he asked if I was okay because I hadn't left my place all day. I had. I went out without my phone. I asked him how he knew. He said he could feel it. That night I put my phone in a drawer and went to sleep without it. I woke up to buzzing, not my phone, my door. I stayed still, heart pounding so loud it felt fake. The buzzing stopped. Then my phone buzzed from inside the drawer. Message after message. He said my location was frozen. He said it felt wrong. He said he was outside to make sure I was okay. I didn't answer. After a long time, the buzzing stopped. The next morning, my location was off. Actually off. Grayed out. Locked. I didn't turn it off. I checked my app permissions. Everything looked normal. Except Tinder. Tinder wasn't there anymore. Not deleted, not logged out. Gone. I went through my phone slowly. Settings, apps, storage. Nothing. No trace, like it had never been installed. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. No words, just a pin dropped. It was my address. I moved out a week later. New place, new number, new phone. I didn't turn location on for anyone. Sometimes, though, when I'm walking at night, my phone warms up in my pocket for no reason. No notifications, no apps open. Just warm. The weird part didn't start with her showing me anything. It started with how normal everything felt right before it went wrong. Like that moment when your phone slips from your hand, but hasn't hit the ground yet. I remember being in that space mentally, scrolling half bored, half hoping for something to break the loop. Then her profile slid into view, and it felt like the app had switched lanes without warning. Her pictures were plain but sharp, like she knew exactly how much to show without trying. No fake poses, no forced smiles. Her bio was short and kind of blunt. She said she valued honesty more than comfort. That line stuck with me for some reason. It felt bold like a challenge, but also calm. I swiped without thinking. We matched fast. Not instant, but fast enough to feel intentional. Our messages didn't have that awkward warm-up phase. It felt like we both skipped it. She asked real questions early. Not deep ones, just ones that made you answer honestly without realizing it. Like what annoyed me more than it should. What I avoided thinking about. What I always defended even when I knew I was wrong. I didn't feel judged. I felt seen. That's the dangerous part. We talked every day, not nonstop, but steady. She remembered things I said in passing, little stuff. She would bring it up days later like it mattered. I liked that. It made me feel solid, like my words landed somewhere. We met for the first time in a bookstore cafe that smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. Not busy, not empty. The kind of place where people sit alone and pretend not to watch each other. She looked like her photos, but more grounded. Like she was fully present in her body. Her eyes didn't dart around. They stayed on me steady, like she was waiting for something to line up. The date was good. Not fireworks good. More like quietly locked in good. We talked about random stuff. Things we liked. Things we hated. Things we never told people because it sounded petty. It felt easy. I didn't feel like I was performing. A few days later, she said she wanted to show me something. She framed it like a trust thing. Like sharing something personal that most people would keep hidden. I didn't push. I didn't ask what it was. I just said okay. We were sitting in her car, parked near a closed swimming pool. Windows down. Air thick and still. She pulled out her phone and opened her gallery. She didn't hand it to me right away. She scrolled first. Slow. Deliberate. Then she turned the screen toward me. At first, I didn't get it. It looked like screenshots of messages. Long blocks of text stacked on a dark background. Familiar layout. Too familiar. I leaned in closer. They were arguments. Not random ones. Not vague. They were between me and her. Same names. Same profile pictures. Same typing style. My typing style. I felt my stomach drop, but my brain tried to save me. People fake stuff. People edit. People joke badly. I waited for the punchline that never came. I started scanning details. Timestamps. Dates. They were weeks ahead. Not just one. Several. Spread out. Some late at night. Some during the day. All dated in the future. All following a timeline that didn't exist yet. She didn't rush me. She let me look. The arguments were specific. Not dramatic, not explosive. The kind that sneak up on you. Misunderstandings. Small resentments. Moments where someone says something they regret, but can't take back. I recognize my own patterns in them. The way I shut down. The way I deflect. The way I'd apologize without fixing anything. It felt like looking into a mirror that remembered things I hadn't done yet. I asked her how she had those. Not accusing, just confused. She said she kept records. She said she liked to be prepared. She said honesty meant not pretending things wouldn't get messy. She scrolled further. There were more. Not just arguments. Breakups, reconciliations, quiet gaps where no messages were sent for days, then sudden long paragraphs trying to patch things up. All dated, all detailed. All written in voices that felt real because they were. Mine was especially accurate. The phrasing, the timing, the excuses. I laughed once. A short sound that didn't feel like mine. She didn't react. She just watched me watch the screen. I asked if she was joking. She said no. She said she hated lying. She said she hated surprises more. I didn't know what to say after that. My thoughts felt slow, like they were moving through water. I tried to reason it out. Maybe she wrote them herself. Maybe she guessed. Maybe it was some weird art thing. But the accuracy killed those ideas fast. There was one screenshot that stuck with me more than the rest. It was dated 2 weeks from then. It showed me accusing her of planning everything, of controlling the pace, of knowing too much. I remembered reading it and feeling defensive even though it hadn't happened yet. I gave her phone back. My hands felt numb. She put it down like she had just showed me pictures of a trip she wanted to take. The rest of the night felt off, not scary, just tilted, like the world had shifted a few degrees and my body had adjusted. I went home early. She didn't stop me. On the way back, I kept thinking about those dates, those moments that hadn't happened yet, but felt locked in. I told myself free will existed, that people aren't scripts, that nothing is fixed. The next day, something small happened. A misunderstanding over text. Nothing major, but the way it unfolded felt familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. I caught myself typing something and stopped. I remembered seeing that same sentence in one of the screenshots. I deleted it. She messaged me later saying I felt distant. I didn't reply right away. I needed space. She sent another message saying this was where things usually shifted. That word usually hit hard. I asked her if she still had those screenshots. She said yes. She said she updated them sometimes when things changed. She said timelines could bend, but patterns stayed. I stopped seeing her in person. Not officially. I just kept being busy. She didn't push. She never does. That's what made it worse. Days went by, then weeks. I started noticing things lining up. Not exactly, but close enough to make me uneasy. Moments where I felt like I was stepping towards something I had already read. One night I couldn't sleep. I opened Tinder out of habit. Her profile was gone. Not unmatched, gone, like she had never been there. I checked my messages with her. Still there. All intact. I scrolled up to the beginning. The first message she ever sent me was timestamped 3 days after we actually matched. That did make sense. I checked my calendar. Screenshots on my phone. Old notifications. There was a gap, like something had been edited out of my memory, like the timeline had been trimmed. I asked her about it. She didn't answer. Hours passed. Then a single message came through saying some things only make sense once they are over. The next morning, I woke up to a notification. Not a message. A reminder. Something I didn't set. It was dated 2 weeks ahead. It said argument. Nothing else. I deleted it. Later that day, my phone buzzed again. Another reminder. Same time. Same word. Same future date. I turned my phone off. When I turned it back on, my gallery had changed. There were new screenshots. Dated further ahead.
Hey guys, really sorry to disturb you, but if you're enjoying the stories up until this point, please smash that like button. That's all I'm asking for you guys. Let's break some records this year. Now back to the stories.
The night started with that fake calm that only happens when you convince yourself nothing strange will happen because you are tired of being cautious. I remember thinking that while I was getting ready, standing in my room with my phone balanced on the sink, hair still damp, Tinder open like a background app instead of the main event. I had already matched with him days ago, already agreed to dinner, already told myself he seemed normal enough. That phrase should bother me more than it does. He was exciting on the app, and that was kind of the point. His pictures looked like they were taken by accident. No try-hard poses, no dramatic angles. He looked like someone who didn't think much about how he came off, which felt safe. His messages were steady, not constant. He didn't overshare, didn't rush. It felt like someone matching my pace instead of dragging me somewhere. The restaurant he picked was mid-range but quiet, the kind of place with warm lights and menus that are a little sticky for being wiped too many times. Not fancy, not sketchy. Just a place people go when they want to talk without shouting. I got there first and sat at a small table near the back, scrolling to kill time, feeling that weird mix of boredom and alertness. When he showed up, it clicked into place easily. No awkward pause. No second guessing if I recognized him. He looked like his photos, maybe a little more tired, which somehow made him feel more real. We ordered, talked about random things, let the conversation wander without forcing it. It felt smooth in that quiet way where you forget to check the time. I didn't notice how often his phone was on the table until later. Face up, screen dark, but always there. I didn't think much of it then. Everyone does that now. Halfway through dinner, right as our food arrived, his phone buzzed. Not a long buzz, just a sharp alert. The screen lit up. I saw it before he did. The Tinder logo popped up, followed by a notification line underneath. It said his match was nearby. What made my stomach drop wasn't just that it was Tinder. It was the tiny circle image next to the text. It was my face. My exact profile picture, the same one I was using. Same angle, same lighting, same half smile. It was sitting right there on his screen while I was sitting right there across from him. For a second, I thought maybe my brain filled in the details wrong. Like when you think you see your name somewhere random. But the longer the screen stayed lit, the clearer it got. He picked up his phone then. I watched his face change. Not panic, not shock. Confusion, layered with something else I couldn't read. He glanced at me, then back at the screen, then at me again. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mouth felt dry, like my body had paused all non-essential functions. He swiped the notification away too fast. That somehow made it worse, like he was trying to erase something before it fully existed. I tried to breathe normally. I told myself there was a glitch. Apps mess up. Locations lag. Profiles duplicate. There were 100 explanations that didn't require the world to tilt. But then his phone buzzed again. This time, he didn't pick it up right away. I leaned forward slightly, pretending to reach for my drink. The screen lit up again. Same notification. Your match is nearby. Same picture. Still me. Still sitting across from him. I felt cold then, even though the place was warm. My skin prickled in that quiet way that doesn't scream danger, but whispers it. He finally picked up his phone again and turned it slightly away from me, but not enough. I could still see the screen change as he opened the app. His thumb hovered, then moved. I watched his expression tighten. He scrolled. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe another profile. Maybe a message. Maybe nothing. Instead, he turned the phone toward me slowly, like he wanted to be careful with what he showed. On his Tinder screen was my profile. Active. Distance listed. Not 0. Close. The distance marker was flickering like it couldn't decide where I was. He refreshed the page. The distance changed. Farther, closer, then nearby again. I felt disconnected from my body, like I was watching myself sit there from a few feet behind my eyes. I pulled my own phone out, hands stiff, movements clumsy. I opened Tinder. My profile was normal. No notifications, no messages, no sign of anything wrong. According to my app, I was right where I should be. According to his, I was someone else. Or maybe I was two places at once. He closed the app and put his phone face down. The food sat between us untouched. The sounds of the restaurant felt louder, sharper, like they were pressing in. I wanted to leave, but my legs didn't move. Part of me needed to understand what was happening before I could do anything else. I reopened Tinder on my phone and checked my matches. He was still there. His profile looked normal. I tapped it. The distance showed him as nearby. That part made sense. Then I noticed something else. Under his name, there was a small line I had never seen before. Active nearby. My chest tightened. I refreshed. His profile blinked for a second. Then it duplicated. 2 profiles. Same photos. Same name. Same distance. One said active now. The other said nearby. I locked my phone and slid it back into my bag like it might bite me. I looked up at him. His face looked drained, like the color had been pulled out slowly. He didn't look like someone playing a trick. He looked like someone realizing a rule had broken. Another buzz. His phone vibrated against the table, muted but insistent. He didn't pick it up. I did something I didn't plan to do. I leaned slightly to the side and glanced past him toward the restaurant entrance. Nothing. Then I glanced toward the mirror behind the bar. That's when I noticed the reflection. For a split second, there was movement behind us. Not clear, not sharp. Just a shape where there shouldn't have been one. Like a person standing too close, just out of direct sight. I blinked and it was gone. His phone buzzed again. He picked it up this time and stood abruptly, chair scraping loud enough that a few people looked over. He glanced around the restaurant, eyes moving too fast, like he was searching for something specific. He looked at me, then past me, and then back at me. His phone screen lit up again in his hand. This time, I saw the notification reflected faintly in his eyes. Your match is very close. I didn't wait any more. I grabbed my bag and stood, heart hammering, not caring how it looked. I walked toward the door, not running, but not slow either. I didn't look back. Outside, the air felt heavier, like it had thickness. The street was quieter than it should have been. I stood under a streetlight and pulled my phone out again. Tinder was still open. I watched my own profile update. The distance flickered. Nearby. Then closer. Then nearby again. I forced close the app. My phone buzzed immediately. Tinder notification. Your match is nearby. The profile picture was still mine. But this time, the angle was wrong. It looked like it had been taken from behind. I deleted the app right there. No hesitation. The icon disappeared. My phone went quiet. I walked home without checking my phone again. Later that night, I read an email from Tinder saying my account had been logged in from another device nearby and logged out for safety. I didn't try to recover it. A week later, I ran into him again by accident across the street from a grocery store. He looked tired. Thinner. He didn't approach me. His phone buzzed in his hand. He looked down, then looked up at me, and then past me. I walked away. I didn't even want to go out that night. That was the headspace. Tired, half irritated, scrolling just to scroll, not really looking for anything except distraction. Tinder felt like background noise more than a plan. I remember lying on my bed, phone above my face, thinking about how every match felt the same lately. Faces blending together, conversations starting strong and fading into nothing. Then her profile showed up, and for some reason I stopped. It wasn't flashy. No filters. No heavy edits. Just normal photos in a dim apartment. A couch, a window, a lamp that gave off yellow light. She looked relaxed but not casual, like she was aware of herself at all times. Her bio was short and kind of odd. It said she preferred honesty over small talk and liked first meetings at her place because it felt more real. That should have been a red flag, but I didn't treat it like one. I told myself some people just hate public dates. We matched fast. She messaged first. Her texts were clean and direct. No extra words, no filler. She didn't ask a bunch of questions. She told me things instead. What she liked. What she didn't. How she hated repeating herself. I noticed that last part later, not then. When I suggested coffee or a walk, she pushed back gently but firmly. She said she didn't like neutral spaces. She said she wanted to see how someone existed when they weren't performing. She said her place was quiet and easier. I hesitated, but not long. I told myself I had done this before. People invite people over all the time. Nothing bad had happened yet. She sent me her address. An apartment building on the edge of town, not sketchy, but not busy either. The kind of place where everything looks the same and nobody lingers outside. I drove there as the sky was getting darker, telling myself I could leave whenever I wanted. The building smelled like cleaning solution and an old carpet. Her unit was on the 3rd floor. The hallway was narrow, lights buzzing softly above. I knocked once, then again. She opened the door slowly, like she was measuring something before committing. She looked like her photos, but sharper somehow, more alert. She stepped back to let me in without saying much. The door closed behind me with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. Her apartment was neat but sparse. Not empty, just intentional. Couch, small table, a few plants that looked recently moved. Nothing personal on the walls. No photos, no clutter. It felt like a place someone passed through rather than lived in. But she did live there. She moved around comfortably like it was familiar. We sat down. She offered a drink. I declined. She watched me for a second longer than normal, like she was noting that choice. The air felt still, like sound didn't bounce the way it should. We talked. Kind of. She asked me to tell her about myself, but not in a casual way. She wanted specifics. Where I grew up, how I said my name. how people usually mispronounced it. When I answered, she nodded slowly, like she was storing the information somewhere. Then she asked me to say my name again. I did. It felt weird but harmless. She repeated it back slightly off. Not a big mistake, just wrong enough to notice. She frowned, not at me but at herself. She said she wanted to get it right. She asked me to say it again. I did. She closed her eyes this time, like she was listening hard. Then she said it again. Still wrong. Something tightened in my chest. Names aren't hard. Mine isn't complicated. I corrected her gently. She nodded, but her expression didn't change. She asked me to repeat it again. I laughed a little, trying to keep things light. I said it again, slower, clearer. She repeated it back, closer, but still not right. She tilted her head, studying me like I was the problem. She said she had trouble with names sometimes. She said she needed to hear them a few times before they stuck. She asked me to repeat it again so she would get it right this time. That phrase stuck out, this time. I said my name again. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, like it didn't belong fully to me in that room. She smiled slightly, like she had solved part of a puzzle. Then she asked me to say it one more time, just to be sure. I did. I was starting to feel uncomfortable, but not enough to leave. Not yet. It felt rude to walk out over something so small. She finally said my name correctly, perfectly. The relief I felt was embarrassing. She nodded like she had confirmed something important. Then she asked me if anyone else ever called me something different. Nicknames, shortened versions, things people use when they knew me well. I told her a couple. She repeated those two, testing the sound of them, rolling them around her mouth quietly. I noticed then that she hadn't told me her last name. I realized I didn't actually know much about her beyond what she had chosen to say. That imbalance started to weigh on me. I tried to steer the conversation away. Talked about work, hobbies, random stuff. She listened, but her attention drifted. She kept glancing at me in a way that felt evaluative, not curious. At one point, she stood up and walked into the other room. She told me to stay put. I sat there alone on her couch, listening to drawers open and close. I noticed a notebook on the table. Plain cover. No title. I didn't touch it. She came back holding her phone. She sat across from me and looked at the screen, then at me, and back again. She said something about patterns, about how people sound different when they say their own names versus when someone else says them. She asked me to repeat my name again. I hesitated. My throat felt tight. I asked why. She said she needed to hear it from me again. She said it mattered. I said it. She smiled wider this time. Then she asked me to say it again, but slower. I did. She typed something on her phone as I spoke. I watched her fingers move. She nodded again. Then she asked me to say it like I was introducing myself to someone new. I did. Then she asked me to say it like I was correcting someone who got it wrong. I did that too, my voice sharper than before. She leaned back and exhaled like she had finished a task. She said she was glad we did this. She said names were tricky, especially when you had to get them right more than once. I asked her what she meant by that. She didn't answer directly. She said she had a bad habit of mixing people up. She said sometimes she met someone and thought she knew them, but the details didn't line up. She said saying names helped anchor things. I stood up then, slowly. I said I needed to go. I tried to keep my tone calm. She didn't react right away. She just looked at me, eyes scanning my face like she was checking something one last time. Then she asked me to repeat my name again. I said no. Her expression shifted, not angry, disappointed like I had interrupted a process. She stood up too and stepped closer, not invading my space, but close enough that I felt it. She said she was almost there. She said she just needed to hear it one more time to get it right this time. I stepped back. My heart was pounding. I told her I was leaving. She didn't block the door. She didn't grab me. She just watched as I walked past her, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind me without her touching it. I stood there for a second, breathing hard, listening. Nothing. I walked to my car fast. I didn't look back. When I got home, my phone buzzed. A Tinder notification. She had unmatched me. Then another notification came through. A message request from an unknown account. The name on the profile was mine. Same photos, same bio, same everything. The only difference was the name spelling. It was almost right. The part that messes with me the most is how safe I felt right before everything flipped. Like that fake calm you get when nothing bad has happened yet, so your brain relaxes its grip. I remember checking my reflection in a dark window as I walked to the place, thinking I looked normal, thinking this would be another forgettable night I would barely remember by the weekend. I wish it had been that kind of story. We matched late one night when I couldn't sleep, the kind of scrolling where you aren't even reading bios anymore, just flicking your thumb and waiting for something to stop you. His profile did jump out. That's probably why I swiped. Regular photos, decent smile, nothing intense. His bio joked about liking food more than people, which felt harmless. We talked a bit, nothing deep, nothing heavy. He didn't ask personal stuff. He didn't overshare. It felt neutral in a way that lowered my guard. He suggested a small diner not far from where I live. Open late, always busy enough to feel public but quiet enough to talk. I agreed. It felt safe. Public place, lights, people around. All the boxes checked. I got there first and slid into a booth near the middle. Vinyl seats, sticky table, the kind of place that smells like fries no matter what you order. I checked Tinder while waiting. His profile was still there. Distance showed close. That made sense. When he walked in, I recognized him right away. Same face, same posture. He smiled when he saw me. It didn't feel forced. He sat across from me like he had done this 1,000 times. Maybe he had. The date started fine. That's the worst part. Easy conversation. Dumb topics. Complaining about traffic, laughing about bad movies. Nothing that would make a warning light flash. I even caught myself thinking I might see him again. His phone sat on the table next to his hand. Screen down. I didn't think about it. Halfway through eating, he picked it up and glanced at it. His expression didn't change much, but something in his eyes sharpened, like focus snapping into place. He tapped the screen a few times, then placed the phone back down. My phone buzzed in my pocket right after. I pulled it out, expecting a random notification. Tinder. It showed that I had been unmatched. No explanation, no message, just gone. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. My brain tried to catch up, like I had tripped over a step. I refreshed. Nothing changed. His profile was gone. I looked up at him. He was smiling. Not wide, not creepy in an obvious way. More like satisfied, like someone checking off a task. He leaned back slightly, relaxed in a way he hadn't been before. His posture changed. Shoulders loose, hands open, like something had shifted in his favor. He communicated something then without words. His mouth moved, but the meaning landed heavier than sound ever could. The message was clear. The app no longer mattered. The layer between us was gone. Whatever rules I thought existed had been removed. My stomach dropped. I felt heat rush up my neck and into my face. Embarrassment hit first, then confusion, then something colder underneath. I laughed awkwardly, trying to keep things normal, but my voice sounded wrong to my own ears. Thin. I checked my phone again. No match. No chat history, like he had never existed there. He watched me watch the screen. His smile didn't fade. I started to feel very aware of the booth, how it boxed me in, how close the table edge was to my legs. The diner suddenly felt quieter, like the background noise had pulled away just enough for me to notice. He moved his phone closer to him and turned it face up. The screen lit briefly. Tinder was open on his end. I caught a glimpse of my profile before he locked it. Active recently. Still there. My hands felt numb. I told myself I was overreacting. Unmatching mid-date was rude but not dangerous. People do weird stuff. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe he thought it was funny. But his eyes never left me. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table, invading my space just enough to test it. I leaned back without meaning to. The vinyl seat squeaked loudly. Nobody looked over. My phone buzzed again. A Tinder safety notification popped up, delayed, useless. It said something about staying safe and meeting in public. It felt like an insult. He glanced at my phone and nodded like he knew exactly what it said. Something in me snapped then. Not panic, clarity. I needed to leave. I slid out of the booth and stood up too fast. My knee hit the table. Pain shot up my leg, grounding me just enough to move. I grabbed my bag and turned toward the counter, planning to pay and go. He stood up too. He didn't block me. He didn't grab me. He just followed, close enough that I could feel him behind me. Not touching, not rushing, just there. I paid quickly, hands shaking as I passed over my card. The cashier didn't notice. Nobody did. That's what scared me the most. How invisible it felt. I walked toward the door. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might shake my ribs loose. The bell above the door jingled when I pushed it open. Cold air hit my face. Outside, the parking lot was dim. Yellow lights. Long shadows. My car was a few rows away. I walked fast, not running. Running felt like permission. I kept my head straight, keys ready in my hand. I heard footsteps behind me. Not rushed, not heavy, measured. I unlocked my car and slid inside, locking the doors immediately. My hands fumbled with the keys before the engine started. I glanced up. He stood a few feet away, smiling the same calm smile. He raised his phone slightly, like a casual wave. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. No message. Just a notification preview saying nearby. I drove off. I didn't look in the mirror until I was halfway home. The road behind me was empty. When I got back to my place, I double-checked the locks and sat on my bed with the lights on, phone in my hand. I opened Tinder out of habit, even though I knew it was pointless. The app opened to the home screen like nothing was wrong. Then a new profile loaded. His face. Same photos. Different name. Distance listed as extremely close. I deleted the app, powered my phone off, sat there in the quiet listening to my own breathing. Later that night, I read an email from Tinder about unusual activity and account safety. It suggested I have a match if I felt comfortable. I did. The next morning, there was a flyer taped to my apartment door. Local restaurant ads, gym promos, nothing out of place. Except one line scribbled at the bottom in pen. Not protected. The hook wasn't her face or the match or even the message. It was the pause. That weird pause you feel when you stare at your phone a second longer than normal because something doesn't fully register but your brain tells you to pay attention anyway. I was mid-scroll, thumb-tired, mind blank, when her profile loaded and I just stopped. No reason, no spark. Just that feeling like I had walked into a room and forgot why. Her pictures were clean but emotionless. Good lighting, good angles, but no warmth. Like profile photos taken for a reason other than dating. Her bio was short and vague, nothing clever, nothing personal. She didn't say what she wanted, just what she expected. I should have swiped past. Instead, I matched. She messaged first. No small talk. No jokes. Just straight questions. Where I worked. How tall I was when my last relationship ended. It felt more like filling out a form than flirting, but I didn't mind. It was different. Different feels interesting when you are bored. When I suggested meeting somewhere public, she didn't argue, just redirected. She picked a quiet spot near a waterfront park with a row of closed food stands and a long concrete wall people sat on to watch the water. Not crowded, not empty, it sounded fine. We met in the early evening. The sky was gray, the water flat and dull. She was already there when I arrived, standing with her phone in her hand, not looking at it, just holding it like a tool. She looked like her photos, but somehow flatter. But the depth didn't carry over. We sat on the wall and talked, or at least I talked. She listened in a way that felt focused but detached. She didn't react much. Didn't laugh, didn't interrupt. She just watched my face like she was tracking measurements. I started to feel self-conscious. I kept adjusting how I sat, how I spoke. I noticed she didn't share much about herself unless I asked directly, and even then her answers were brief. She avoided details. After a while, she said she wanted a picture together, not in a cute way, more like a checklist item. I hesitated, but agreed. People take pictures. It's normal. She stood close, close enough that I could smell her shampoo. She held the phone out and angled it carefully, adjusting until she seemed satisfied. She took more than one photo. I could tell by the way her finger moved. She checked them quickly, then stepped back. She didn't smile or thank me. She opened her gallery and started swiping. That's when things shifted. She held the phone up between us and showed me another picture. Not one she had just taken. A different guy, different setting, different lighting. But the framing was the same. Same angle, same distance, same posture. She looked from the screen to my face, then back again. Her eyes moved slowly, comparing details. Jaw, hairline, shoulders. She zoomed in on both photos, flipping back and forth like she would spot the difference. I laughed awkwardly, asking who that was. She didn't answer. She kept comparing. Then she nodded once, small and final. She communicated approval without emotion, not excitement, not attraction. Acceptance, like choosing an item off a shelf when the first option was available. The words she used were simple. Dismissive, not said cruelly, just plainly. The meaning landed heavy. I was acceptable. I would work. My stomach dropped. I tried to joke it off, saying something about having a twin out there. She didn't react. She locked her phone and slipped it into her pocket like the task was complete. The rest of the time felt off balance. I felt like I had failed a test I didn't know I was taking, even though she seemed satisfied. She asked a few more questions after that, but they felt different, more specific. How flexible my schedule was, how attached I was to my job, if I had family nearby. I answered carefully now. My excitement was gone, replaced by that slow crawl of unease. I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to make a scene. The place was quiet. The water barely moved. Time felt thick. She mentioned the other guy again, casually. Said he had been almost right. Almost. Said something had been off. Timing, maybe. She didn't explain further. She didn't seem interested in my reaction. I asked what she meant by almost right. She said sometimes people don't fit as expected once you see them up close. She said she preferred to compare early so she didn't waste time. I realized then that this was the date to her. It was a selection. I stood up and said I should go. My voice sounded steady, even though my chest felt tight. She didn't argue. She didn't ask me to stay. She just looked up at me and nodded like she had anticipated it. As I walked away, I felt her eyes on my back, not following, just watching. I didn't turn around. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about that other photo. The similarity. The fact that she had it ready. That this wasn't spontaneous. I opened Tinder out of habit, half expecting to see something strange. Her profile was gone. Not unmatched. Deleted. I shrugged it off and went to sleep. The next day, I got a notification from Tinder saying I had a new match. Her face loaded again. Same pictures. Same bio. But the distance was wrong. It said she was less than 1 mile away. I didn't swipe. I closed the app. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a message request from an unknown account. No text. Just an image. It was the picture she took of us. Next to it was another photo. Another guy. Same pose. Same angle. Then another. And another. A line of near identical photos with different faces filling the same space. Mine was marked. I blocked the account, deleted the app again. A week later, I saw someone who looked almost like me sitting on that same wall by the water. Same jacket, same posture, different face. I kept walking. When I got home, my phone buzzed one last time before I powered it off for good. A notification preview from Tinder flashed briefly before disappearing. Match confirmed. The night started with that itchy feeling like something was already wrong, but I couldn't point to where. I had felt it before, that low buzz in my chest that shows up when you are tired of your own routine and still step into it anyway. I remember standing in my bathroom, phone balanced on the sink, staring at my reflection and thinking I should cancel. not because of fear, just because I didn't care enough to go, but I went anyway. That's how these things always start for me. We matched on Tinder 2 days earlier. His profile wasn't memorable, which I took as a good sign. Average photos, decent smile, nothing loud. His messages were short and polite. No overthinking, no compliments that felt rehearsed. He suggested drinks at a bar not far from where I live, one I had been to before. Public, busy, familiar. I told myself that meant safe. I got there first. The bar was dim but warm, the kind of place where the lights are low enough to hide details but bright enough to see faces. Music hummed in the background, not too loud. I took a stool at the bar and waited, scrolling mindlessly. He showed up right on time. He looked like his pictures, maybe a little more serious. He smiled, shook my hand, and slid onto the stool next to me. Nothing felt off yet. If anything, he felt confident in a way that was almost comforting. Before I could even open my mouth to order it, he leaned slightly toward the bartender and ordered a drink for me. Not asking, not checking, just saying it like it was already decided. I froze for half a second, then laughed it off. People do that sometimes, I told myself. Maybe he thought he was being smooth. The bartender set the drink in front of me. It was what I would have picked. Dark glass. Strong smell. I wrapped my fingers around it anyway. That's when he said it. Not loud, not dramatic, just calm, like it was advice. He warned me not to finish it if I planned on leaving early. My brain didn't catch up right away. The words landed, but the meaning lagged behind like bad internet. I blinked and looked at him, waiting for the joke that didn't come. His expression didn't change. No smile, no smirk, just neutral. I felt the cold wash over my arms. My fingers loosened around the glass. I asked him what he meant, trying to keep my tone light. He didn't repeat himself. He just said it was better that way. He said people sometimes regret rushing things. The bar noise suddenly felt louder. Laughter from somewhere behind me sounded fake, like a recording. I became very aware of my body. My legs crossed, my shoulders tight, the drink sweating against the bar. I didn't take a sip. He watched the glass more than he watched me. His eyes flicked to it every few seconds, like he was tracking a timer. I told myself I was misreading it, that my anxiety was filling in gaps that weren't there. We talked, sort of. He asked basic questions, where I worked, what I did for fun, but his answers to my questions were vague. He kept steering things back to timing, schedules, how long I usually stayed out, whether I liked late nights or early mornings. I started checking the exits without meaning to. One by the bathroom, one near the door, the bartender nearby wiping down glasses, not paying attention to us. He leaned in closer at one point, invading my space just enough to test it. I leaned back. He didn't apologize. My phone buzzed, a notification from a friend. I glanced down, relief washing over me just from seeing a familiar name. He noticed. His eyes followed the movement. He asked if I was planning to leave soon. I said maybe. I said I wasn't sure how long I would stay. His jaw tightened just a little. He looked at the drink again, then back at me. He said he had already planned the rest of the night. The way he said it made my stomach twist. Not like a suggestion, like a schedule. I told him I wasn't comfortable and that I might head out. My heart was pounding now, loud enough that I wondered if he could hear it. I reached for my bag. That's when he reminded me about the drink. Not to finish it if I was leaving early. The implication finally hit fully then, like a door slamming shut. I pushed the glass away from me, hard enough that it sloshed slightly. I stood up too fast, stool scraping loudly against the floor. A couple people glanced over. He didn't move. He just watched me, eyes steady, like he was curious how this part would play out. I told him I was leaving. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. He shrugged like this outcome didn't bother him. He said something about wasted effort, but I was already stepping away. I walked straight to the door, not looking back, my heart racing. The cool air outside hit my face, and I sucked it in like I had been underwater. I didn't stop walking until I was halfway down the block. I checked my phone with shaking hands. No messages. No missed calls. I opened Tinder without thinking. We were still matched. His profile still there. Distance listed as very close. I unmatched him immediately, blocked, deleted the app for good measure. I didn't go straight home. I walked around, letting the adrenaline burn off, replaying everything in my head. The drink, the warning, the way he watched it instead of me, the way he talked about plans like they were already set. When I finally got home, I locked the door and sat on my couch in silence, lights on, phone in my hand. I told myself it was over, that I had trusted my instincts and left, that nothing else would come of it. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message, just a photo. It was the drink. The exact glass. Same bar. Same compensation ring on the counter. Then another photo came through. The glass empty. I blocked the number immediately. My hands were shaking again. A few minutes later, another notification popped up. Not a message. A location ping preview. It showed the bar. Then it updated. Closer. Then closer again. I turned my phone off and didn't turn it back on until morning. The next day, I read an email from Tinder saying my account had been flagged for suspicious activity and temporarily disabled for safety. No details, no explanation. I didn't appeal it. A week later, I walked past that same bar in the afternoon. Daylight made it look harmless. I slowed down without meaning to. Through the window, I saw him sitting at the bar. Same stool. Same posture. Another drink in front of him. Untouched. The first thing that stuck with me was what she said. It was how early she said it. We had barely sat down, barely settled into that awkward first minute where both people pretend they are relaxed, and she dropped that line about coincidences like it was a fact everyone already agreed on. It felt too soon for something that heavy, like skipping a step on the stairs and not realizing it until your foot lands wrong. I had matched with her that morning while I was half awake, standing in line for coffee, phone in one hand, keys in the other. Her profile did scream danger. Honestly, it barely screamed anything. Soft smile, casual clothes, nothing flashy. Her bio mentioned patterns and paying attention, which I thought was just a personality thing. People love sounding deep on Tinder. I swiped without thinking and forgot about it until she messaged me first. Her messages were calm and confident. Not flirty, not cold. She wrote like someone who knew exactly what she wanted to say and did bother softening it. She suggested meeting that same evening. No long build-up. No endless chatting. I said yes mostly because I had nothing else going on. We met at a small spot near the edge of downtown, one of those cafes that turns into a quiet bar at night. Exposed brick, dim lights, playlists that try too hard to be cool. I got there a little early and sat near the window, watching cars pass, replaying my day in my head the way you do when you are waiting for someone and have nothing else to focus on. My day had been boring. Work in the morning. Grocery store. Gym. Quick stop at a corner shop because I forgot to grab something. Nothing special. Just routine. She arrived right on time. She didn't scan the room when she walked in. She looked straight at me like she already knew where I was. That should have registered more than it did. I stood up. We did the awkward first meeting thing and sat back down. She didn't waste time. She leaned back slightly, eyes on me, and said she didn't believe in coincidences. Not in a dramatic way. More like she was stating her favorite color. It felt out of place, but I smiled politely and nodded like it was a normal opener. Then she started listing places. Not big guesses. Not general areas. Specific stops. In order. She mentioned the coffee place I went to that morning, even noting the line was long. She mentioned the grocery store and the fact that I took longer than planned because one aisle was blocked. She mentioned the gym and the machine I used last, because it was the only one open. She mentioned the corner shop near my place, and even the brand I picked up because it was on sale. She did it calmly, like she was reading a grocery list. My smile froze halfway through. My brain tried to find an explanation that didn't involve anything creepy. Maybe I had posted something. Maybe I had mentioned it without realizing. Maybe it was all coincidence, even though she said she didn't believe in that. I asked her how she knew of all that. My voice sounded steady, but my chest felt tight. She tilted her head slightly and said she paid attention. She said most people leave trails without realizing it. She said the world was loud if you listened correctly. I checked my phone under the table, half expecting to see some app open, some setting on. Nothing. No shared location. No social posts from that day. I was careful about that stuff. She smiled when she noticed me checking, not amused, satisfied. I laughed awkwardly and tried to brush it off, saying she must be really good at guessing. She didn't agree or disagree. She just looked at me like she was waiting for something to click. We ordered drinks. I watched her hands as she lifted the glass. Steady, relaxed. She didn't seem nervous at all. If anything, she seemed more comfortable now than when she arrived. She kept going. She mentioned the route I took to work that morning, including the detour I took because of traffic. She mentioned the song that was playing in my car when I stopped at a light, even though I had told her what I listened to. She mentioned the time I checked my phone at lunch because I was waiting on a message that never came. That one hit harder. I felt exposed in a way that didn't make sense. I stopped smiling. I asked her directly how she knew these things. I didn't try to hide my discomfort this time. She leaned forward slightly and said she watched patterns, not people. She said if you understood the pattern, the person filled itself in. She said days weren't random. They were sequences. I wanted to leave. I could feel that instinct pulling at me, telling me to get up, make an excuse, go anywhere else. But I stayed. Part of me needed to know how far this went. I asked her to tell me something I hadn't done that day. I figured that would break it, force a mistake. She paused for the first time since we sat down. Not long, just enough to notice. Then she mentioned a place I almost went but didn't. The bookstore near the gym that I skipped because I was tired. She mentioned standing outside it for a second before deciding against it. My stomach dropped. That was something anyone could have seen online. It was something I posted. It was a moment that lived only in my head. She watched my reaction closely then. Her eyes sharpened like she was adjusting focus. She said this was why she didn't believe in coincidences. She said paths overlap for reasons. She said people meet because they are already close in ways they don't notice. I asked her if she followed me. She didn't say yes or no. She said following was the wrong word. She said she observed. She said distance didn't matter as much as people thought. I pushed my chair back slightly, creating space. My heart was pounding now, loud enough that I could feel it in my ears. I told her I was uncomfortable. She nodded like she expected that. She said discomfort usually came before understanding. I stood up. I told her I was leaving. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't raise her voice. She just said one more thing before I went. She listed the rest of my day. The exact time I would get home. The fact that I would reheat leftovers instead of cooking. The show I would put on without really watching. The moment I would check Tinder again out of habit. She said it like it was already done. I didn't respond. I walked out, heart racing, the night air hitting my face like a slap. I didn't look back. On the way home, I kept checking my mirrors. Every car felt suspicious. Every shadow felt too still. Nothing happened. The streets were normal. Too normal. When I got home, I locked the door and stood there for a long moment listening. Nothing. I tried to shake it off, telling myself she was a creep with too much time or some weird trick. I put my bag down and went to the kitchen. I stopped cold. The leftovers I planned to eat were already on the counter. Not reheated, just sitting there like I had taken them out earlier. I stood there staring at them, my skin crawling. I was alone. I knew I was. I checked my phone. A Tinder notification sat at the top of the screen. New message. From her. I had unmatched her before leaving. I was sure of it. The message was short. It said today is almost over. I blocked her, deleted the app, turned my phone off. Later that night, lying in bed in the dark, I realized something else. She hadn't mentioned the cafe we met at as part of my day. Like it was the first time we had crossed paths. The first weird thing wasn't what I saw. It was when I saw it. That tiny gap in time where your brain notices something before it understands why it matters. I remember feeling a hiccup in my thoughts. We were already sitting there, already mid-date, already past the point where first impressions lock in. Everything should have been settled. Instead, it felt like the ground shifted an inch and nobody else noticed. I matched with him late afternoon while I was procrastinating doing anything useful. His profile looked normal in a way that almost felt intentional. Average photos, no filters, a bio that read like he wanted to appeal to as many people as possible without standing out. It mentioned liking late night food, not taking life too seriously, being into whatever the other person was into. That last part felt lazy but harmless. I swiped because I was bored. He suggested meeting the same day, which I usually don't do, but I had nowhere to be and nothing better planned. We picked a casual place, one of those spots that tries to be everything at once. Coffee, drinks, snacks, all in one room with uncomfortable chairs and too many plants. I got there early and took a seat near the window. I opened Tinder without thinking, scrolling out of habit, then locked my phone and waited. When he walked in, I recognized him immediately. He looked exactly like his pictures. Same hair, same smile, same slightly unsure posture. That actually made me relax. The date started smooth. Easy conversation, nothing heavy. He asked questions but didn't push. Laughed at the right times. Listened when I talked. I remember thinking he felt adaptable, like he was good at matching energy. Some people are just like that. About 20 minutes in, I pulled my phone out to check the time. Tinder was still open from earlier. I didn't mean to look at his profile again, but my thumb did what it always does. Muscle memory. I tapped his name. His bio looked different. Not completely different. Just slightly adjusted. A line had changed. Where it had said he liked late night food, it now said he loved late night food after long conversations. That stuck out because I had just mentioned liking long talks more than small talk. I frowned, assuming I had misremembered. Bios are easy to forget. I locked my phone and kept talking. A few minutes later, I mentioned I hated loud places and preferred quieter corners. Nothing dramatic, just a passing comment. He nodded, smiled, leaned back like he agreed. When I checked my phone again, the bio had changed again. Now it said he preferred low-key places and quiet nights. My stomach tightened. I scrolled up and down, checking the rest. Photos were the same. Distance the same. But the bio lines felt freshly typed, like they had just been edited. The phrasing matched mine too closely. Not copied word for word, but close enough to feel intentional. I locked my phone again, heart beating faster. I told myself there was a delay, that Tinder had refreshed something late. Maybe he had updated it earlier and it just loaded now. That explanation didn't fully land, but I held on to it. I tested it without meaning to. I mentioned I was really into a specific kind of music that wasn't mainstream. I didn't say it excitedly. I said it casually, like it didn't matter. He reacted immediately, saying he liked all kinds of music. Vague, flexible. 5 minutes later, I checked again. His bio now included a line about being into that exact kind of music. I felt a wave of heat crawl up my neck. I looked up at him, trying to read his face. He was watching me, but not intensely. More like attentively, like he was waiting for feedback. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to tip my hand. I started paying closer attention to my own words. Everything I mentioned, I watched to see if it would appear. Favorite food, schedule, sense of humor. Little preferences I usually didn't think twice about. Each time, the bio shifted. Not instantly, but close, like it needed a minute to catch up. The changes weren't obvious enough that someone glancing would notice. They were subtle, refined, like someone tuning a signal. I started to feel like I wasn't on a date anymore. I felt like I was being sampled. At one point, I mentioned a random thing I didn't actually care about. A hobby I tried once and didn't like. I wanted to see if it would show up. It did. His bio updated to say he loved that exact thing. I swallowed hard. I asked him how often he changed his profile. I tried to sound curious, not alarmed. He shrugged and said he liked keeping things fresh. He said people were always changing, so why not reflect that? That answer felt rehearsed. I excused myself to go to the bathroom. Once inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. My hands were shaking as I opened Tinder again. His bio was still changing. This time, a new line appeared that referenced something I had said out loud. It mentioned liking people who get nervous but pretend they aren't. My chest tightened. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I hadn't said that. I had typed that. I had just thought it while sitting across from him. I put my phone face down and stared at the bathroom mirror. My reflection looked normal. Too normal. I splashed water on my face and told myself to leave. When I went back out, he was sitting exactly how I left him. Same posture. Same relaxed expression. He looked up and smiled like nothing had happened. I sat back down but kept my bag in my lap. I was done. I just needed an opening. Then my phone buzzed. A Tinder notification. Profile updated. I didn't touch my phone. I didn't need to. He leaned forward slightly, like he sensed the shift. He asked if I was okay. I nodded, but my body was already preparing to leave, adrenaline buzzing under my skin. I stood up and said I had to go. I didn't wait for a response. I walked straight to the door, heart racing, feeling his eyes on my back. Outside, the air felt sharp and real. I didn't stop until I was halfway down the street. I pulled my phone out with shaking hands and opened Tinder one last time. His bio had fully changed. It now described someone exactly like me. Not preferences, not hobbies. Me. My schedule, my habits, my little quirks I had never written anywhere. At the bottom, a new line had been added. Looking for someone who just left. I unmatched him immediately. Blocked. Deleted the app. Stood there breathing hard, trying to ground myself. When I got home, I checked my phone again out of habit. Tinder was gone. But in my Notes app, a new note had appeared. It was titled Profile Draft. Inside was a description of me written in his tone, still being edited. The thing that made me uneasy was the question itself. It was how early she asked it, and how casual it sounded, like she was asking if I recycled or if I preferred oat milk. There are questions that belong later, after a rhythm forms, after both people agree what this even is. When they show up too soon, they feel like someone skipping ahead in a script you hadn't read. I matched with her late at night when I couldn't sleep and my room felt too quiet. Her profile didn't scream chaos. It actually felt calm. Soft lighting in her photos, neutral clothes, a smile that didn't look staged. Her bio said she was between places and keeping things simple. That line didn't bother me at the time. Lots of people float for a bit. I swiped, we matched, and she messaged first. She typed like she was already comfortable. Not flirty, not stiff. Just easy. She didn't ask what I was looking for or dump her life story. She talked about small stuff, daily routines, places she liked to walk. It felt normal in a way that lowered my guard. I remember thinking she sounded like someone who fit into gaps. We decided to meet the next evening at a low-key food spot near my apartment. Not fancy, just a place with booths and warm lights where people linger longer than they planned to. I walked there instead of driving, kneeing the movement, telling myself to stay present. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth with her jacket folded neatly beside her. She looked exactly like her photos, maybe a little more tired, but not in a concerning way. She smiled when she saw me, scooted over to make space, and we ordered. Conversation flowed easily at first. No awkward pauses. She asked about my job, my neighborhood, how long I had lived there. I told her I lived there a little over a year, still learning which noises meant nothing and which ones didn't. She laughed at that like she understood the adjustment. She talked about moving around a lot. Not dramatically, just matter of fact. Short stays, temporary arrangements, couches, sublets. She said she didn't like being tied down to one place. I nodded, thinking she meant emotionally. Then she asked about my lease. Not in a heavy way, just slipped it in between sentences about the food and the lighting. She asked if my lease allowed permanent guests. I blinked, thrown off by the specificity. Not roommates, not visitors. Permanent guests. I laughed a little and said I wasn't sure. I said I hadn't looked at that part closely. She nodded like she had expected that answer. She didn't press right away. She took a sip of her drink, eyes on the table, like she was mentally checking something off. We kept talking, but my attention had shifted. I started noticing small things. How she placed her bag on the seat beside her instead of the floor. How she kept glancing around the restaurant like she was mapping exits. How she asked follow-up questions about my place that felt a little too detailed. How many rooms? How much storage? If I had extra keys? I tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground, hobbies, shows, dumb opinions. She went along with it easily, but the questions kept circling back. How late I stayed up. Whether I minded someone else being around while I worked. If I liked quiet mornings or noise. At one point she mentioned she had to be out of where she was staying soon. Not in a dramatic way. Just a statement. Like mentioning a dentist appointment. She said she didn't know where she would land next, but she wasn't worried. She said things always worked out when you aligned yourself with the right situation. The word situation stuck with me. I asked where she was staying now. She waved it off, saying it was temporary and complicated. She didn't offer details, and I didn't push. Still, a knot formed in my stomach. The pieces were adding up cleanly. The food came and we ate, but I wasn't really hungry anymore. I found myself watching her more than listening, noticing how comfortable she was. Not just relaxed, but settled, like she belonged wherever she sat. She asked if I had roommates. I said no. She smiled wider at that than anything else that night. She asked if I ever had people stay over long term. I said not really. She nodded slowly, like she was imagining the space. Then she said it again, more directly this time. About permanent guests. She said some leases were strict and some weren't, and it was good to know early. I felt my chest tighten. I told her I wasn't looking for anything like that. I tried to keep my tone light, but firm. I said I liked my space. She didn't get defensive. She didn't apologize. She just said she understood and that it was good to be clear. But the way she said clear made it sound like a test. After that, she shifted gears completely. She started talking about how hard it was to feel rooted, how places started to blur together when you didn't stay long enough to leave a mark. She said she liked finding places where she could settle in without resistance, where nobody questioned her presence. I didn't know what to say to that. I nodded, trying to stay polite, but my body was already pulling away. I checked my phone, hoping for an excuse. Nothing. She asked if I wanted to walk after dinner. I said I was tired and should probably head home. She accepted that easily, too easily. No disappointment. No pushback. She gathered her things calmly. Outside, the air was cool and the street quiet. She stood a little closer to me than necessary. Not touching. Just close enough to feel her presence. She thanked me for dinner and said she was glad we talked about expectations early. That word again. We went our separate ways. I walked home faster than usual, keys ready in my hand, replaying the night in my head. I told myself I was reading too much into it. She was just straightforward. Some people were like that. When I got to my apartment, something felt off immediately. My door was unlocked. I froze, heart pounding, listening. The place was quiet. I stepped inside slowly, checking each room. Nothing out of place. No signs of anyone there. On my kitchen counter sat a folded piece of paper. I didn't remember leaving anything there. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was a note. Short, neat handwriting. It said, "Thanks for the walk. See you soon." No name. I checked my phone. A Tinder notification sat at the top of the screen. A new message from her. I opened the app. We were still matched. The message said she had thought about it and felt like my place would work really well. I unmatched her immediately. Blocked. Deleted the app. That night, I barely slept. Every sound felt too loud. Every shadow felt wrong. The next morning, my building manager emailed everyone about a temporary guest staying in one of the units while between places. No unit number listed. I checked my lease. Permanent guests allowed with notice. I almost didn't go out that night because the sky looked wrong. Not stormy, not dramatic, just flat and heavy, like the day had been stretched too thin. I remember standing by my door with my jacket half on, phone in my hand, thinking I could still cancel and nobody would care. But I went anyway because Tinder dates had started to feel like chores and I hated breaking routine more than risking another bad one. We matched earlier that afternoon. His profile wasn't memorable, which at this point felt like a relief. Regular photos, regular smile, nothing intense. His bio mentioned liking late dinners and quiet corners, which sounded fine. He didn't message much, just enough to confirm a time and place. No build-up, no excitement. It felt transactional, which weirdly made me feel safer. We picked a small late-night diner on the edge of town. Not a chain, not trendy. Vinyl booths, buzzing lights, the kind of place where the menu has too many options and none of them are great. I got there first and slid into a booth near the window, phone face down, trying to stay present. When he walked in, he looked around before he looked at me. Not scanning casually, but deliberately like he was checking corners. Then his eyes landed on me and he relaxed a fraction. He sat down quickly, back to the wall, facing the door. I noticed that right away. I told myself some people were just anxious. Maybe he had social nerves. Maybe he liked knowing what was coming. Still, something about the way he positioned himself made me uncomfortable, like I had been placed into a scenario he already understood. We ordered. He didn't look at the menu much. His eyes kept drifting to the entrance. Every time the door opened, his shoulders tensed slightly. I tried to joke about it, asking if he was expecting someone, but he brushed it off, saying he just liked being aware. Conversation was uneven. Not bad, just distracted. He asked questions, but his focus kept breaking. Every few minutes, his attention snapped back to the door. I found myself doing the same, caught in his rhythm, starting to feel like we were waiting for something together. Then he leaned in. Not flirtatiously, urgently. His voice dropped so low I barely caught it, but the meaning came through clear. He said we needed to leave, not later, soon, before the other matches arrived. The words hit me wrong. My brain stalled, like it didn't know which category to put that in. I asked what he meant, but he didn't answer directly. He just glanced at the door again, then at the window, then back at me. He said they were usually late, but not by much. He said this place was popular. He said timing mattered. My stomach tightened. I laughed nervously, trying to diffuse it, saying Tinder matches don't just show up to the same diner. That was when he looked at me like I was missing something obvious. He explained it without explaining. He said people overlapped more than they thought. That apps didn't separate things as cleanly as they promised. That sometimes matches crossed paths without realizing it. He said it was better to leave early than to be seen. Be seen by who was the question I didn't want answered. I looked around the diner, a few couples, a group of friends laughing too loud, a man sitting alone at the counter. Nothing threatening, nothing unusual, but my pulse had started racing anyway. He shifted in his seat, restless now. His knee bounced under the table. He checked his phone, then slid it face down like he didn't want me to see the screen. I asked again what he meant by other matches. This time, he leaned closer, his voice barely audible, breath warm against my ear. He said sometimes dates overlapped. Sometimes more than one match picked the same place. Sometimes people didn't realize they were in the same room until it was too late. Too late for what, I asked. He didn't answer that either. He reached for his jacket, already halfway out of the booth. He told me we should go somewhere else. Somewhere quieter. He said he didn't want things to get messy. That word sent a chill through me. I stayed seated. My instincts were screaming now. Leave, but not with him. Leave alone. Get distance. I told him I wasn't comfortable going anywhere else. I said I wanted to finish my drink and head home. He frowned, genuinely frustrated for the first time. Not angry, worried. He said finishing the drink wasn't a good idea. He said lingering made it easier to notice patterns. I pushed my glass away. The door opened again and a couple walked in. He flinched hard this time, shoulders jerking. He stared at them until they sat down, then exhaled sharply. He muttered something under his breath about timing being off. I slid out of the booth. My hands were shaking, but I tried to keep my movements calm. I said I was leaving. I didn't wait for his response. He stood up fast, almost knocking into the table. He grabbed my arm lightly, just enough to stop me, then immediately let go like he realized he crossed a line. His eyes were wide now, panic breaking through the calm. He said if I left alone, they might follow the wrong one. He said it would be confusing. I pulled my arm back and stepped away. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out the diner noise. I told him not to touch me again. He froze, then slowly sat back down, hands flat on the table. His eyes followed me as I walked toward the counter to pay. I could feel the stare like pressure on my back. I paid quickly and walked out without looking back. The night air felt colder than it should have. I stood on the sidewalk for a second, breathing hard, scanning the street. Nothing out of place. No one following. I started walking toward my car. Halfway there, my phone buzzed. Tinder notification. I had a new match. My stomach dropped. I stopped walking and opened the app with shaking hands. A new profile loaded. Same diner in the background of one of the photos. Same lighting. Same booth. The face was different. Distance listed as less than 1 mile. Another buzz. Another match. Another profile. Different face. Same diner. My chest tightened. I unmatched both immediately, heart racing. I closed the app and shoved my phone into my pocket. When I reached my car, I locked the doors and sat there shaking. I looked at the diner through the windshield. He was standing outside now, scanning the parking lot, eyes moving fast. When his gaze landed on my car, he stiffened. Then he looked past me. I turned in my seat, pulse spiking. 2 people were exiting the diner together, a man and a woman, both on their phones, both looking around like they were searching for something. My phone buzzed again. Unknown notification preview. Nearby. I started the car and drove away, heart in my throat. I didn't stop until I was back home, door locked, lights on. I checked Tinder again out of morbid curiosity. My match list was empty, except for one profile at the top. His, still active. Bio updated. Says prefers leaving early. I didn't think that question would be the thing that stuck. It was dramatic. It was even asked in a creepy way. It came up like one of those icebreaker questions people throw around when silence feels awkward and they want to pretend they are being deep. I had answered stuff like that 100 times before without thinking. That's probably why it worked. We matched late one night when I was half paying attention. I had the TV on low, lights off, foam glowing way too bright in my face. Her profile felt calm. Not boring, just steady. Her pictures looked recent, normal places, nothing staged. Her bio said she liked conversations that went a little too far. I remember smirking at that and swiping. She messaged first. Not flirty, not stiff. Just present. She asked how my night was going, then followed up with questions that felt thoughtful without being invasive. She didn't rush. She didn't push. It felt like talking to someone who knew how to wait. We agreed to meet a couple days later at a small art space that doubled as a cafe. White walls, concrete floors, soft music, the kind of place where people talk quietly even when they don't need to. It felt safe, open, public. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table near the back, notebook beside her coffee. She stood up when she saw me, smiled, and shook my hand. Nothing weird, nothing forced. We sat down and started talking. It felt easy at first. She listened closely, like she was actually processing what I said instead of waiting to respond. She didn't interrupt. She didn't overshare. I remember thinking she felt grounded. About 20 minutes in, she asked it. What scared me most? No build-up, no context. Just dropped into the conversation like it belonged there. I laughed a little and tried to deflect, saying something generic about heights or losing my phone. She didn't laugh with me. She just waited and resting against the notebook, eyes on me, patient. Something about that made me answer honestly. I told her the thing I never say out loud. The quiet fear that sits under everything. The idea of losing control slowly and not noticing until it was too late. Routines changing. Decisions not feeling like mine anymore. Being guided without realizing it. I regretted saying it the second the words left my mouth. She nodded once. Then she picked up the pen and wrote it down. Not typing it. Not pretending to. actually writing it carefully, like she wanted to get the wording right. She underlined it once. Then she said calmly, that was fine. She said we wouldn't start with that. The way she said start made my stomach drop. I asked what she meant. She smiled lightly and said it was just a phrase. She said people like to know each other's fears early. She said it helped avoid accidents. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was reading too much into it, but my eyes kept drifting to the notebook. The page was still open, my fear written there in ink. Not a joke. Not vague, specific. We kept talking, but something had shifted. She started steering the conversation subtly, asking about my routines, what time I woke up, how often I changed things up, whether I liked surprises or preferred predictability. I answered cautiously now, choosing words more carefully. She noticed. She smiled again, like she appreciated the adjustment. At one point, she flipped the notebook closed and slid it into her bag. The sound of it hitting the bottom felt heavier than it should have. She said she liked people who were self-aware. She said fear was just another form of information. She said it told you where not to push too fast. Too fast for what was the question I didn't want to ask. I checked my phone, pretending to read a message. My heart was beating faster than normal. I thought about leaving, but nothing had crossed a clear line yet. Everything still lived in that uncomfortable gray area where you feel silly for reacting. She asked if I wanted to take a walk, just around the block, fresh air. I said yes because it felt safer than sitting there staring at her bag. Outside, the street was quiet. The art space sat on a corner with long sidewalks and old buildings. She walked slightly ahead of me, not enough to lead, just enough to set the pace. She reminded me of something I had said earlier, not the fear, something smaller, a comment about liking predictable mornings. She repeated it back to me almost word for word. Then she said that made sense given what scared me. My chest tightened. I asked her what she meant by that. She said people who feared losing control often built strong routines without realizing it. She said routines were like soft cages, comforting at first. I stopped walking. She stopped too, turning to face me. Her expression was calm, curious, like she was watching a reaction rather than causing one. I told her I didn't like where the conversation was going. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She apologized immediately, said she didn't mean to push, said she got carried away sometimes. She said we could change the subject. We walked back to the cafe. I was ready to end it politely and leave. Inside, she grabbed her bag and pulled the notebook back out. She flipped through pages quickly, not showing me what was inside, then stopped at one. She glanced at it, then back at me. She said she forgot to ask something earlier. She asked what time I usually went to bed. I hesitated, then answered vaguely. She wrote that down too. I asked why she was writing everything. She said she liked remembering things accurately. She said memory could lie if you didn't anchor it. I told her I needed to go. I stood up, grabbing my jacket. She didn't stop me. She just nodded and said she understood. As I walked toward the door, she called out one last thing. Not loudly, just enough for me to hear. She said thanks for trusting her. She said it would make things smoother later. I left without responding. The walk home felt longer than usual. Every sound felt sharper. I kept replaying her words in my head, especially that part about not starting with my biggest fear, like there was a plan with steps. When I got home, I locked the door and stood there for a minute listening. Nothing. My place felt normal. Safe. I tried to shake it off. I opened Tinder to unmatch her. Our chat was still there, but her profile picture had changed. It was a photo of a notebook page. My words were written on it. My fear. Underlined. I unmatched her immediately. Blocked. Deleted the app. My phone buzzed right after. Unknown number. No text. Just an image. A photo of my apartment building. Taken from across the street. I didn't respond. I turned my phone off and sat in the dark, breathing slowly, trying to ground myself. The next morning, I woke up to a note slipped under my door. No envelope. No name. It said starting small is better. I didn't live there much longer after that. The thing that keeps replaying in my head is the message itself. It's the timing. The exact second it happened, like someone clapped right next to my ear and my body reacted before my brain caught up. I remember thinking this is either nothing at all or something I'm going to remember forever. Turns out it was the second one. I matched with him on a random weekday afternoon while I was killing time between classes. His profile felt harmless. Not exciting, not sketchy. Just a guy with a couple blurry photos, a short bio about liking late food and quiet nights. Nothing that stood out enough to raise alarms. I swiped because I was bored, not because I felt a spark. We talked for a few days. He didn't text nonstop. Didn't overshare. Didn't push for anything fast. If anything, he felt careful. He asked if I preferred busy places or quiet ones. He asked what made me comfortable on first dates. I remember thinking he was trying a little too hard to be considerate, but I told myself that was better than the opposite. We agreed to meet at a casual place near campus, one of those hybrid spots that's a cafe during the day and a bar at night. Lots of people, lots of noise, lots of exits. I felt good about it. I got there first and grabbed a table near the middle. Not tucked away, not right by the door. I put my phone face down and tried to relax. When he walked in, he smiled and waved like he already knew exactly where I would be sitting. That should have stuck with me more than it did. He looked normal, like his photos. Maybe a little more serious, but nothing off. He sat across from me, set his phone on the table screen down, and asked how my day was. His voice was calm, friendly. Everything felt fine. We ordered drinks and started talking. It was awkward. Not amazing either, just easy. We talked about classes and annoying professors, places we liked to go when we needed quiet. He listened closely, nodding at the right times. I noticed he mirrored my posture a lot. When I leaned back, he leaned back. When I crossed my arms, he did too. It felt subconscious, but it also felt studied. About half an hour in, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. I ignored it at first. I didn't want to be rude. But then it buzzed again, longer this time. That familiar Tinder vibration. My stomach dropped before I even checked it. I pulled my phone out under the table and glanced at the screen. It was a Tinder message. From him. Asking if I felt safe on this date. My eyes flicked up automatically. He was sitting right there, across from me, looking at me, smiling slightly like nothing was out of place. My brain froze. It felt like two realities tried to exist at once, and my head couldn't decide which one to accept. The app showed him typing moments ago. His phone was still on the table, screen down, untouched. I didn't respond right away. My fingers hovered over the screen and I checked the name, checked the photo. It was definitely his account. Our chat history was right there. Nothing fake. I looked up at him again. He met my eyes and tilted his head slightly, like he was waiting for my reaction, not worried, curious. I forced a smile and put my phone back down, pretending nothing happened. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I told myself it was a glitch. Maybe he had scheduled some kind of safety message earlier. Tinder had those features now, right? Check-ins, reminders. That explanation felt thin, but I grabbed onto it anyway. A minute passed. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. Same chat. Same question. Do you feel safe right now? I felt cold all over. This time I noticed something else. The message timestamp wasn't just recent. It said sent now, like it had been typed seconds ago. I looked at his hands, both resting on the table, not touching his phone. I felt trapped in my chair, like if I moved too fast, something bad would happen. I swallowed and tried to keep my voice steady as I asked him if he had just sent me something. He smiled wider, not amused, more like pleased. He said sometimes it was easier to ask things in writing. He said it gave people space to answer honestly. That answer made my skin crawl. I asked him why he didn't just ask me directly. He shrugged and said the app felt safer. He said Tinder was designed for questions like that. I glanced around the room. People laughing, music playing, waitstaff moving between tables. Everything looked normal. Too normal. It made me feel crazy for being scared. My phone buzzed again. A third message. It said you can be honest here. My chest tightened. I realized then that this wasn't about my comfort. It was about watching me react, testing something. I typed a short response. I said yes. I felt safe. I didn't want to escalate anything. I just wanted to leave without drama. The typing indicator appeared immediately. Another message came through. It said good. Then another one followed. It said keep it that way. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. A couple people looked over. I didn't care anymore. I grabbed my bag and told him I needed to go. He didn't stand. He didn't reach for me. He just looked up calmly like this was part of the plan. He said something about understanding and timing and how it was good to check in early. I walked away without responding. Outside, the night air hit me hard. My legs felt shaky as I crossed the street and kept walking. I didn't stop until I was 2 blocks away. I leaned against a wall and checked my phone again. Another Tinder message. It said leaving early can mean something is wrong. I unmatched him immediately, blocked, deleted the app entirely. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. I got home and locked the door behind me. My apartment felt different. Not unsafe, just washed. I turned on every light and sat on my bed, trying to slow my breathing. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. No message, just a screenshot. It was our Tinder chat. My yes answer circled. Under it, a new line of text. Safety confirmed. I blocked the number and powered my phone off. The next morning, I turned my phone back on and read an email from Tinder about a completed safety check on my recent date. It thanked me for participating and asked if I wanted to provide feedback. It listed the time. Exactly when we were sitting across from each other. I didn't respond. Later that day, walking past the same cafe, I slowed without meaning to. Through the window, I saw him sitting at a table alone, phone in his hand. It buzzed. He smiled at the screen. The night felt normal right up until it did, which is probably why it still bugs me more than the ones that were obviously strange from the start. Nothing screamed danger. Nothing felt off enough to leap early. It was one of those dates that sit right in the middle, where you assume it will either fade into nothing or turn into a second plan later. I had already decided it would probably be forgettable. That assumption is what makes this one stick. We matched earlier that week. Her profile felt relaxed and human. Not polished, not mysterious. Photos in regular places, a messy kitchen, a couch with blankets thrown over it. Her bio mentioned liking long dinners and desserts more than meals. That made me smile. It felt harmless. We talked for a few days. Nothing intense, nothing deep. She didn't overshare, didn't push. It felt steady. We picked a small restaurant downtown. Not fancy, not cheap. The kind of place people go when they want to sit for a while and not be rushed out. Warm lights, wooden tables, menus with too many options. I got there first and waited by the window, watching people pass and thinking about how tired I was of first dates feeling like auditions. She showed up right on time. She looked like her photos, maybe a little more confident. She smiled easily and sat across from me like this was her first time doing this. Conversation came naturally. Not sparks, but not awkward either. We talked about work, places we liked, dumb stories from childhood. Time moved faster than I expected. I noticed she paid attention to timing a lot. Not in an obvious way, but she checked her phone subtly between courses. Not texting, just glancing. I didn't think much of it. People do that. Dinner went smoothly. We ordered dessert without hesitation. She suggested sharing, which felt like a good sign. The mood was relaxed. I remember thinking this was one of the better dates I had been on in a while. While we waited for dessert, I pulled my phone out to check the time. Habit more than anything. Tinder was still open from earlier that day. I didn't expect to see anything different. Her profile was gone. At first, I thought it was a glitch. The app does weird stuff sometimes. I refreshed. Nothing. Our chat had disappeared too. No messages, no match, like she had never existed there. My stomach dropped. I looked up at her immediately. She was watching my face, not my phone. She smiled slightly, like she had been waiting for that exact reaction. I asked what happened. trying to keep my voice light, but my chest felt tight. She didn't deny it. She didn't look confused. She just tilted her head and studied me, like my expression was the important part. She pointed out that I looked surprised. Then she said something that landed wrong in a way I can't fully explain. She said this was usually where it changed. Not ended, not stopped. Changed. I didn't know what to say to that. I asked what she meant. She waved it off casually, like she was talking about the weather shifting. She said things tended to go differently after dessert. She said that was the point where people revealed themselves. The dessert arrived then, interrupting the moment. Plates placed between us, steam rising. Everything around us looked normal. Other couples talking. Waitstaff moving quickly. Background music humming. It made me feel dramatic for being unsettled. We ate in silence for a few minutes. I couldn't taste anything. My mind kept circling that phrase, where it usually changes. Usually meant this had happened before, often enough to notice a pattern. I asked her if she unmatched me. She nodded, calm, like she was confirming something obvious. She said she'd like to remove the app layer once she had enough information. She said it was cleaner that way. I laughed awkwardly, trying to lighten it, saying that was a bit sudden. She didn't laugh with me. She just watched. She said most people didn't notice right away. She said some didn't check until later. She said my reaction told her a lot. That made my skin crawl. I asked her what it told her. She said it told her I was paying attention. She said that was good. Good from what was the question I didn't want to ask. I pushed my dessert plate away slightly. My appetite was gone. I glanced around the room again, suddenly very aware of how boxed in the table felt. She leaned back in her chair, relaxed, like she was done with the important part of the night. She started asking different questions now, not light ones. Questions about how I handle change, how I'd reacted when plans shifted unexpectedly, whether I liked stability or excitement more. It felt like a follow-up section, not a continuation. I answered carefully. I didn't want to give her more than necessary. She nodded at my answers, but her attention felt split, like she was comparing them to something internal. I asked why she unmatched me instead of just saying she wasn't interested. She looked genuinely confused by that. She said interest was the issue. She said unmatching didn't mean disengaging. She said it meant removing noise. Noise was a word she kept coming back to. I told her I wasn't comfortable with how things were going. I tried to keep it polite, but firm. I said I thought it might be better to end the night there. She accepted that immediately. No argument. No disappointment. She just said that was fine and that it usually went that way too. Usually again. We paid and stood up. As we walked toward the door, she walked beside me like nothing had changed. Not awkward. Not tense. It felt wrong in a way I couldn't pin down. Outside, the night air felt sharp. The street was busy enough to feel safe. I stopped and told her I was heading home. She nodded and said she understood. Then she said one last thing that stuck with me more than anything else that night. She said sometimes the first half of a date was just data collection. She said dessert was the checkpoint. I didn't respond. I turned and walked away. On the way home, I kept replaying everything, the timing, the unmatch, the way she seemed so sure about patterns. I told myself she was just someone who dated a lot and thought in weird terms. That explanation didn't settle anything. When I got home, I opened Tinder out of habit, my match list refreshed. Her profile was back. Same photos, same bio. But the distance was wrong. It said she was extremely close. I unmatched her again immediately, blocked, closed the app. My phone buzzed a second later. Unknown number. No text, just a photo. It was the dessert plate. Empty. Then another photo came through. The table we had been sitting at. Then another. The restaurant door. I blocked the number and turned my phone off. The next morning, I read an email from Tinder saying a match had been restored due to a sync error. It apologized for the confusion. Later that day, walking past that same restaurant, I slowed without meaning to. Through the window, I saw her sitting at a table alone, dessert in front of her, notebook open. She looked up. Even from outside, I could tell she was smiling. The night felt light enough that I didn't think twice about staying out a little longer. That was a mistake, I guess, trusting the vibe instead of the quiet signals underneath it. I remember feeling relieved more than anything, like I had finally landed on a date that didn't feel like work. Nothing intense, nothing strange, just normal. Those are always the ones that mess with me the most afterward. We matched a few days earlier. His profile was forgettable in a comforting way. Casual photos, nothing dramatic. His bio mentioned liking walks at night and knowing the city well. I remember thinking that sounded kind of nice. Someone who knew their way around, someone confident. We talked a bit, not much. He wasn't a fast texter, which made him feel less desperate. When he suggested meeting for a late snack near downtown, I agreed without overthinking it. The place we met was busy enough to feel safe but not loud. Food trucks, people milling around, string lights overhead. The kind of spot where nobody really pays attention to anyone else. He was already there when I arrived, leaning against a railing, phone in his hand. He smiled when he saw me and put the phone away immediately. I liked that. The date went fine. Better than fine, actually. Easy conversation, no awkward pauses. He laughed at the right times. Remembered small things I said. Didn't interrupt. It felt balanced, like we were moving at the same pace. I caught myself relaxing, which doesn't happen often on first dates. We grabbed food and sat on a low wall nearby. The night was warm, not humid, just comfortable. I remember thinking this was the kind of date that fades into a second one naturally. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced. When it got later, I said I should head home. I didn't live far, just a short walk through familiar streets. He immediately offered to walk me. Not in a pushy way, just matter of fact, like it was the obvious next step. I hesitated for a second, then agreed. People offer that all the time. It felt polite. We started walking side by side, conversation still flowing. He asked about my neighborhood, what it was like at night. I told him it was quiet, mostly families, nothing sketchy. He nodded, listening closely. About halfway there, we reached an intersection where I usually cut left. It's a longer route, but better lit, with houses and open windows. Without thinking, I turned that way. He didn't. He stopped short, then corrected me, telling me that was the right way. The words hit weird, not aggressive, just certain, like he knew better. I laughed and said it was fine, that I always went this way. I started walking again. He caught up quickly, his pace matching mine a little too perfectly. He told me he thought I lived the other direction. He said the shorter route went straight, then right, then down the alley behind the old store. My stomach tightened. I asked how he knew where I lived. I tried to keep my tone casual, but my chest felt tight. He said I mentioned it earlier, that I had talked about passing that store on my way home sometimes. I tried to remember if I had said that. I couldn't. Maybe I had. Dates blurred together. I told him I preferred this way. More lights. More people. He nodded, but something shifted. His shoulders tensed. His eyes scanned the street ahead, then behind us, like he was recalculating. We walked in silence for a bit. I became very aware of my footsteps, the sound of them echoing too loudly. The houses around us looked normal. Porch lights on. Cars parked along the curb. Nothing off. Still, I felt like I had broken some expectation I didn't know existed. He asked again if I was sure. Not questioning, just confirming. I said yes. I told him I liked sticking to familiar routes. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He said familiar didn't always mean safest, that sometimes predictable paths were worse. That comment sat heavy between us. I told him I had lived here long enough to know what felt right. I tried to sound confident, but my voice felt thinner than usual. We reached another corner, one where I usually crossed, and took a shortcut through a small park. I didn't plan on taking it that night. It was darker, less open. I slowed, intending to stay on the main road. He didn't slow down. He stepped toward the park path and glanced back at me, surprised that I wasn't following. He said this was faster. He said it cut right through. I stopped completely. I told him I wasn't going that way. I said I was almost home anyway. He frowned slightly, like I had messed up a plan. He looked past me, then down the street ahead, then back at me. His jaw tightened for just a second. He asked me to confirm my address. That was the moment everything inside me screamed to leave. I told him I wasn't comfortable sharing that. I said I was fine on my own from here. I thanked him for walking me part of the way. He laughed softly, like I was being overly cautious. He said he just wanted to make sure I got home the right way. The right way. I told him this was the right way for me. He looked at me for a long moment like he was trying to decide something. Then he nodded and said okay. He stepped back, giving me space. Relief washed over me so fast it made me dizzy. I started walking again, this time faster, not looking back. My heart was pounding, but I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe he was just awkward. Maybe he meant well. Half a block later, I glanced behind me anyway. He was still there, standing under a streetlight, watching. I kept walking, turning another corner sooner than I usually did. I didn't want him guessing my place. I took a longer route, looping through streets I knew well, making sure to stay in the light. I didn't see him again, but the feeling didn't leave. When I finally got to my building, I slipped inside quickly and locked the door behind me. My hands were shaking. I leaned against the wall listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. Just the hum of the building settling. I checked my phone. A Tinder notification sat at the top of the screen. Message from him. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at the preview. My heart hammered in my chest. When I finally opened the app, my stomach dropped. He had sent a message saying I took the longer route. He said it added almost 10 minutes. He asked if everything was okay. I unmatched him immediately, blocked, deleted the app. I didn't want to see anything else. I went to bed with the lights on. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was done, that I was safe, that I had trusted my instincts and left. On my way to class, I passed the intersection where I had turned the night before. Someone had chalked arrows on the sidewalk, pointing the other direction. Small, faint, like a game, like directions. I kept walking. That afternoon, I checked my phone out of habit. Tinder was reinstalled. Open. A single profile loaded. His. Bio updated. Says prefers efficient routes. Distance listed as nearby. The thing that pulled me in wasn't her confidence or her looks or even the match itself. It was the calm. That unnerving calm that feels earned, like someone who has already seen how things go and doesn't bother pretending anymore. I remember thinking she felt finished with surprises, and that should have scared me more than it did. We matched late at night when my brain was fried from scrolling too long. Her profile didn't try to sell anything. No jokes. No emojis. Just a few photos that felt current and a bio that said she liked patterns and honesty. Nothing else. It felt stripped down in a way that made me curious. I swiped because I wanted to see how that kind of person talked. She messaged first. Short sentences. Clear questions. No filler. She didn't flirt much, but she wasn't cold either. It felt like talking to someone who already knew what she was doing with the app. When she suggested meeting, she didn't ask where I preferred. She picked a place and time like it was already decided. I hesitated, then agreed. We met at a quiet bar that sat half underground, the kind of place where the outside noise disappears as soon as you step inside. Dim lights, low ceilings, heavy tables. It felt isolated in a comforting way at first. She was already there, sitting in a booth, phone face down, hands folded neatly like she was waiting for an appointment. She looked like her photos, maybe a little sharper. Her eyes stayed on me when I walked over, tracking instead of scanning. We sat across from each other and ordered drinks. Nothing fancy, nothing slow. Conversation started normal enough. She asked about work routines, how long I had been using Tinder. I answered honestly, not thinking much of it. She nodded along, listening closely, like she was cataloging instead of reacting. Then she said she liked transparency early. She said it saved time. I agreed without really thinking about what that meant. About halfway through the first drink, she reached in her bag and pulled out her phone. She unlocked it and turned the screen toward me without ceremony. Not dramatic, not secretive. It was a list. Not notes like random thoughts. Structured. Names in a column. Dates next to them. Durations written in days, weeks, sometimes months. Some had short comments beside them. Nothing emotional. Just observations. Words like faded, stalled, incompatible, replaced. She told me it was a list of men she had met from Tinder. My stomach tightened, but I tried to stay neutral. People joke about keeping lists. This felt different, though. It wasn't casual. It wasn't messy. It was clean. Final. She asked if I wanted to know how long each one lasted. Not in a threatening way. Not teasing. Just a question, like offering to show me a menu. I laughed awkwardly and said maybe later. She didn't push. She just nodded and scrolled. My name was there yet. That was the part that stuck with me. She explained that she liked to track things. Not just dates, but outcomes. She said memory softened details over time, and she preferred accuracy. She said patterns only showed themselves if you wrote things down. I asked what kind of patterns. She said timing mattered more than chemistry. She said most men lasted the same amount of time, regardless of personality. She said the drop-off point was almost always the same. I asked what that point was. She smiled slightly and said it depended on the person. She said some didn't even make it past the first phase. Phase was a word that made my skin crawl. She scrolled again and pointed to a few names. She said some lasted a single night, some a week, some longer. She said the longest ones were usually the ones who asked the fewest questions. I felt like I was sitting in a job interview I didn't apply for. I tried to change the subject, asking about her work, her hobbies. She answered, but briefly, like those things didn't matter much. She kept circling back to the list, how it helped her predict things, how she could usually tell by the second meeting how long someone would stay relevant. Relevant to what, I wondered. I asked if she ever deleted the list. She looked genuinely confused by that question. She said, why would she? She said it was useful data. I took a sip of my drink and realized my hand was shaking slightly. I set it down and folded my hands together, grounding myself. She asked how long I thought people usually stayed in each other's lives. I said I didn't know. It varied. She shook her head gently, like I had answered incorrectly. She said everything had a shelf life. She said pretending otherwise just made endings messier. I asked her why she was still using Tinder if she believed that. She said Tinder wasn't about forever. She said it was about cycles. She said you learn faster when you stopped hoping for exceptions. She glanced at her phone again and then back at me. She said she had a rough estimate for me already. That made my chest tighten. I asked what she meant. She said she wouldn't write it down yet. She said she liked to confirm her guesses before committing them to the list. I felt a cold pressure behind my eyes. The bar suddenly felt smaller, like the walls had crept closer while I was looking. I told her I wasn't comfortable with the conversation anymore. I tried to keep my tone calm but firm. I said it felt strange to be measured like that. She nodded, unbothered. She said most people reacted that way at first. She said discomfort was normal when people realized they were part of a sequence instead of a story. I stood up, ready to leave. She didn't stop me. She didn't argue. She just watched, eyes steady, like she was already adjusting the estimate in her head. As I stepped away, she said something that stuck with me long after. She said if I wanted, she could tell me where I would probably fall on the list. She said it might help me decide how much to invest. I didn't answer. I walked out into the night, heart racing, lungs pulling in cold air like I had been underwater. The walk home felt too quiet. Every sound felt delayed. I kept replaying the list in my head. The names, the durations, the casual way she talked about people like outcomes. When I got home, I opened Tinder immediately and unmatched her. Blocked. Deleted the app. I wanted it gone. My phone buzzed a minute later. Unknown number. No message. Just a screenshot. It was the list. Updated. My name was at the bottom. Next to it was a blank space where the duration would go. Below that, a note. Pending. I turned my phone off and sat in the dark for a long time. The next morning, I turned it back on and found another image waiting. The same list. My name updated. Duration listed as shorter than expected. I still think about how casually the night started, like it was allergic to drama. No build-up, no warning signs, no gut feeling screaming at me to stay home. That almost makes it worse. If something feels wrong from the start, you can brace for it. This didn't. It slid in quietly and didn't raise its voice until it was already inside my head. We matched in the afternoon while I was on the bus, half asleep, forehead against the window. His profile didn't stand out. Honestly, that was the appeal. Just a guy with regular photos, regular captions, nothing that felt like he was trying to be impressive. His bio said he hated liars and liked things direct. I remember thinking that was a bold thing to lead with, but not necessarily bad. Some people value honesty a lot. I swiped and forgot about it. He messaged later that night, normal pace, not intense, not dry. He asked what I did that day, not in a probing way, just conversational. When I answered, he didn't jump on details or redirect. It felt balanced. He suggested meeting the next evening at a small place near the river, a quiet bar with outdoor seating and low lights, public enough to feel fine. I agreed. The place was already half full when I got there. Soft music, string lights reflecting off the water, people talking in low voices. I sat at a table near the railing and waited. I remember feeling calm, bored even, like this would be another date that blended into the rest. He arrived a few minutes later, looked like his photos. Same relaxed posture, same slight smile. He greeted me and sat down across from me, setting his phone on the table face down. That felt polite, intentional. Conversation flowed easily, nothing heavy. We talked about work, places we'd like to go when we needed quiet, random opinions that don't matter. He listened closely, nodding at the right times. I noticed he remembered things I said almost immediately, repeating them back accurately. I took it as interest. About 20 minutes in, the topic shifted to honesty. Not abruptly. It came up naturally, like it was always headed there. He said he couldn't stand liars. He said dishonesty ruined everything. He said he preferred the truth even when it was uncomfortable. I agreed, because who doesn't? It felt like one of those statements people make to sound grounded. Then he asked if I ever lied on dates. I shrugged and said not really, nothing big. I said sometimes people soften things to avoid awkwardness, but that was the same as lying. He watched my face closely when I said that, like he was checking alignment. He nodded and said that was good. He said he appreciated consistency. I didn't know what he meant by that, but I didn't ask. We ordered another round. The night air felt cool but not cold. The river moved slowly behind him. Everything still felt normal. Then he picked up his phone. Not abruptly, calmly. He unlocked it and turned the screen toward me. I expected a photo or a message or maybe a playlist. Instead, it was an audio player. A waveform sat across the screen, paused at the beginning. There was a timestamp underneath it, dated later that night, hours ahead. He said something about hating liars again. Then he pressed play. My voice came out of his phone. Not similar to my voice, my actual voice. Same tone, same cadence, even a little pause I do before certain words. I recognized it instantly, the way you recognize your own reflection before details register. The words themselves didn't make sense right away. They were specific, personal. They referenced things that hadn't happened yet, things I hadn't said. They were sentences I could imagine myself saying in certain situations, but I had never actually spoken them. My stomach dropped. I reached for the phone without thinking, but he pulled it back just out of reach. Not aggressive, just enough to keep control. The audio kept playing. My voice talked about feeling uncomfortable, about wanting to leave, about how something felt off. It sounded exactly like something I might say later that night if I got nervous, except I hadn't said it yet. I couldn't breathe properly. My chest felt tight, like the air had thickened. I asked him how he got that recording. My voice sounded far away, like it wasn't coming from me. He didn't answer directly. He said he liked being prepared. He said people tended to lie when they felt cornered. He said this helped him keep things straight. I asked when I said those things. He looked genuinely confused by the question. He said not yet. He said it was coming up. He let the audio play a little longer. My voice mentioned wanting to go home, mentioned feeling watched, mentioned wishing I had trusted my instincts earlier. I felt dizzy. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of the table to steady them. I told him to stop it. He did, immediately, like he was waiting for that exact moment. The waveform froze. The timestamp still sat there, mocking me. I demanded an explanation. I didn't care about sounding rude anymore. I needed to understand how this was possible. He leaned back in his chair, relaxed. He said people were predictable. He said tone, pacing, word choice, that all lined up if you paid attention. He said once you knew someone well enough, you could hear what they were going to say before they said it. I told him that was prediction. That was impossible. He smiled slightly and said most people thought that. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the ground. A few people glanced over. I didn't care. I grabbed my bag and told him I was leaving. He didn't stop me. He didn't grab me. He just said something that made my blood run cold. He said I should probably listen to the rest later, since I was about to say those things anyway. I walked away fast, heart pounding, not looking back. I can feel my pulse in my ears. The sounds of the place felt distorted, like they were underwater. Halfway up the path toward the street, my phone buzzed. A notification. Audio received. I stopped walking. My hands shook as I pulled my phone out. A file sat there. Same format, same waveform, same timestamp style. I didn't open it. I kept walking faster now until I reached the street and flagged down a ride. I didn't stop shaking the whole way home. When I got inside my apartment, I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. The place felt unfamiliar, like I had stepped into a copy of my own lived space. I turned on every light. After a few minutes, I sat on the couch and stared at my phone. The audio file was still there. Unread, untouched. Against my better judgment, I put in earbuds and pressed play. My voice filled my ears again. This time, it was calmer. Tired. It talked about being home, about locking the door, about replaying the night and trying to make sense of it. It mentioned sitting on the couch, mentioned turning on all the lights. I was doing those things as I listened. The recording continued. My voice said I was thinking about deleting Tinder, said I was wondering if blocking him would even matter, said I was scared to sleep. I ripped the earbuds out. I checked the timestamp again. It was still ahead of the current time. I deleted the file immediately, emptied trash, shut my phone off. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for something else to happen. In the morning, I turned my phone back on. There was a new audio file. Shorter this time. Same format. Timestamp just a few minutes ahead. I didn't open it. I deleted Tinder, blocked his number, blocked everything I could think of. That afternoon, while walking to class, I heard someone behind me speaking softly into their phone. My voice. I didn't turn around. The warning came so early that I barely registered it as a warning. It landed like background noise, the kind you nod at and move past because you assume everyone exaggerates a little on first dates. If I had known how heavy those words would feel later, I would have stopped everything right there. But I didn't. I smiled, shrugged it off, and kept going like people always do when something feels slightly off, but not off enough. We matched on a slow afternoon when my brain was fried and I was scrolling just to scroll. Her profile felt warm in a way that was easy to trust. Lots of group photos, casual outfits, smiles that looked real instead of curated. Her bio mentioned liking deep connections and getting attached easily, with a little joke about people ghosting too much. It felt honest, even a little vulnerable. I swiped because I figured someone that upfront couldn't be hiding much. We started talking and it felt easy right away. Not intense, not rushed. She asked questions but didn't interrogate. She laughed at dumb stuff. She shared little stories that made her feel human. She mentioned attachment again once, saying she tended to care fast and that it scared some people away. I told her that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I meant it at the time. We met a few days later at a casual place near campus. String lights, loud music, lots of people. She hugged me when we met. Not too long, not awkward. It felt normal. The date itself was good. Not perfect, but comfortable. The kind where you forget to check your phone for a while. Halfway through, she told me she wanted to be clear about something. She said she got attached easily and that people usually didn't stick around once they realized that. She said it calmly, like she had already accepted it as a fact about herself. I told her I appreciated the honesty. I said I was planning on disappearing. I wish I had chosen my words better. After that, things moved faster than I expected, but not in a dramatic way. Just small steps stacking up. Texting more. Seeing each other again a few days later. Then again. She remembered everything I said, even throwaway comments. She brought me snacks she remembered I liked. She checked it a lot, but it felt caring, not controlling. At least at first. A weekend, she asked if I wanted to meet her friends. I hesitated, but she said it was casual. Just a few people hanging out at her friend's apartment. I told myself it was a good sign. People don't introduce you to friends if they aren't serious, right? The apartment was crowded and loud. Music playing, people laughing, drinks everywhere. She stuck close to me the whole time, hand on my arm, leaning into me like we had been together way longer than we had. I felt a little overwhelmed but didn't say anything. I didn't want to seem cold. She introduced me around. Name, smile, arm around my shoulder. Then she said it. She called me the one who finally stayed. Not joking, not sarcastic, just like it was a title I had already earned. The room reacted in a way that made my stomach drop. Not surprise, recognition. A few people exchanged looks. Someone laughed awkwardly. Someone else said something about it being about time. Nobody questioned it. I forced a smile, but my chest felt tight. Finally stayed implied there had been others. Many others. And that they had not stayed. I tried to brush it off, telling myself she was exaggerating again. People say weird things when they are excited. Still, I couldn't shake the way her friends looked at me. Not curious. Assessing. One of them asked how long we had been seeing each other. When I answered honestly, their eyebrows went up. They glanced at her, then back at me like they were recalculating something. She squeezed my arm, smiling like everything was perfect. But rest of the night felt off balance. She kept referring to future things casually. Concerts months away. Trips she wanted to take together. How nice it would be once I spent more time at her place. I laughed along, but it felt like it was being written into a plan I hadn't seen. When we left, she clung to me harder than before. Outside, away from the noise, she told me she was really happy. She said it felt different this time. She said she could tell I wasn't going anywhere. That sentence sat heavy in my chest. Over the next few days, the attachment she had warned me about showed itself more clearly. Constant messages. Checking if I was okay. Asking what I was doing, who I was with when I would see her next. If I took too long to respond, she asked if something was wrong. Not accusing, just anxious. I tried to reassure her without feeding into it too much. I didn't want to hurt her, but I also didn't want to promise things I couldn't deliver. Every time I tried to slow things down even a little, she looked crushed, like I was pulling the floor out from under her. She started referring to me as her person. Not to me directly, but in passing. Like it was already decided. She talked about people who left her before, but never with anger. More like confusion. She said she never understood why they couldn't just stay. One night, I told her I needed some space. Not ending things, just breathing room. Her reaction wasn't explosive. It was quiet, which somehow felt worse. She went still, nodded, said she understood. Then she asked if I was like the others. I told her no, but that I needed things to move slower. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She said she had heard that before. After that, things shifted again. She did text less. She texted differently, more careful, more intentional, like she was adjusting her approach instead of letting go. I started noticing things that made me uncomfortable. She knew my schedule too well. She showed up places I had mentioned casually. She brought up things I didn't remember telling her. When I asked how she knew, she said I must have forgotten. One afternoon, I walked past a cafe and saw her inside with her friends. I was supposed to meet her that day. She spotted me immediately and waved like it was a coincidence. Her friends looked at me like they had been expecting me. Later that night, she told me she had told them I would probably stop by. She said she had a feeling. I started pulling back more after that, slower replies, fewer plans. I could feel the tension building every time I did. She tried to hide it, but I could see it in the way she watched me like she was bracing for something. One evening, she asked me directly if I was going to leave like the rest. I didn't know how to answer without lying. I told her I didn't know what would happen, but that I cared about her. She nodded and said caring was enough to start. The next day, I got a message from one of her friends, someone I barely talked to at the party. They asked if everything was okay. They said she was upset and that I should be careful with her because I was the one who stayed. That phrase again. I realized then that I was the first to hear it. I was just the latest. That night, I told her I couldn't do this anymore. I told her it was too much, too fast, and that I needed to step away. My heart was pounding, but I knew I had to say it. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just stared at me, expression unreadable. After a long moment, she said okay. She said she understood. Then she said something that still makes my skin crawl. She said I always said that part. I left and went straight home, shaking. I unmatched her, blocked her, deleted Tinder. I needed distance. The next morning, I woke up to a message from an unknown number. It was a photo, a group photo. Her and her friends at that same apartment. In the corner, someone had written names next to faces. Mine was circled. Under it, written neatly, were the words "the one who stayed." Then another message came through. It said not anymore. The moment didn't hit like a jump scare. It crept in slow, like a wrong note you notice only after it keeps playing. I remember staring at my phone, thumb hovering, feeling that familiar relief that comes right after you block someone and then think, okay, that's done. I had no idea that was the exact second it was. I had blocked him for all the right reasons. Nothing dramatic, nothing explosive. Just a growing sense that every conversation felt slightly rehearsed, like he was always one step ahead of me in ways that didn't make sense. He remembered things I didn't remember telling him. He knew when I was online before I messaged. Once, he referenced a corner of my place during a video call that I had shown on camera. I told myself he was observant. Then I told myself I was being paranoid. Then I blocked him anyway. It felt clean at first. Tinder confirmed it. His chat disappeared. His profile gone. That empty quiet felt earned. I tossed my phone onto the couch and went to the kitchen. My apartment felt normal. Same low hum from the fridge. Same faint street noise through the window. I live alone, and that night it felt comforting instead of lonely. I poured a drink, leaned against the counter, and breathed out like I had just finished something difficult. My phone buzzed from the other room. I ignored it at first. I wanted a minute without a screen. Then it buzzed again, that specific vibration Tinder uses. My stomach tightened before my brain could catch up. I walked back into the living room and picked up my phone. Tinder notification. You've matched again. For a second, I thought it was delayed. Apps glitch. Notification stack. I told myself that as I tapped it. The app opened directly to a new match. No bio yet. No name. Just a single profile photo. It took my brain a few seconds to understand what I was looking at. It was my apartment. Not a photo of me. Not a selfie. A photo taken from inside my lived space, angled toward the couch. My couch. The same throw blanket folded over the arm. The same scuff on the coffee table I kept meaning to sand down. The lighting was dim, warm, like it had been taken minutes ago. Because it had. My heart started pounding so hard I felt dizzy. I spun around, scanning the room. Nothing. No movement. No sound. The door is still locked. Window is closed. I looked back at the phone. Distance listed as extremely close. I unmatched immediately. Didn't even think. Swipe, confirm, gone. My hands were shaking. Before I could lock my phone, another notification popped up. You've matched again. Same photo. Same angle. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get a full breath. I checked the corners of the room again, the hallway, the bathroom. Everything looked untouched, quiet. I blocked the profile again. This time, I deleted the app. Watched the icon disappear. I stood there for a long moment, phone in my hand, listening to my own breathing. I told myself that was the end of it. No app, no matches. Then my phone buzzed again. System notification. Tinder installed. I stared at the screen, my mouth dry. I didn't touch anything. The app opened on its own. New match. Same photo. This time, the angle was slightly different. Closer. I felt sick. I grabbed my key to my bag, not thinking, just reacting. I unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway, heart racing. The building was quiet. Too quiet. I didn't see anyone. I locked my door behind me and leaned against it for a second, trying not to panic. My phone buzzed again. Match message received. I didn't open it. I took the stairs down 2 at a time and walked out into the night. The street lights felt harsh and fake. I stood there, breathing hard, scrolling through my phone, trying to figure out what to do. Another notification. Profile updated. Against my better judgment, I opened Tinder. The new profile now had a name. Mine. Same spelling. Same age. Bio said prefers quiet nights at home. The photo was different now. It showed my hallway, taken from just outside my bedroom door. I dropped my phone. It hit the pavement and skidded a little, screen still lit. I picked it back up with shaking hands. Distance listed as 0. I didn't know where to go. My car was parked behind the building. The thought of walking back there made my skin crawl. I stayed under the streetlight, feeling exposed but safer than being inside. I powered my phone off. The screen went black. For a moment, there was silence. Then my watch buzzed. New match. I yanked it off my wrist and threw it into my bag. I spent the night at a friend's place, barely sleeping, replaying everything over and over. In the morning, I turned my phone back on, bracing myself. No notifications. No Tinder app. Nothing. Relief washed over me so hard my knees felt weak. I went home around noon. The apartment looked normal. Undisturbed. I checked every room, every closet. Nothing out of place. I sat on the couch and tried to convince myself it was some kind of glitch, some nightmare fueled by stress. Then I noticed something small. The throw blanket on the arm of the couch was folded differently. I had done that. I checked my phone one last time. Tinder notification. Welcome back.